Good evening and welcome to May's Planning Application Committee meeting. I'm Councillor David O'Mahony, Chair of the committee. We're not expecting any fire drills this evening. If the alarm sounds, you'll be directed to the nearest and safest exit by members of the team. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have 3 apologies for absence. Councillor Kevin Thompson, who will be subbed by Councillor Ying Tong Perrott. Apologies from Councillor Victoria Wheeler, who's being subbed by Councillor Pat Tedder, but Councillor Wheeler is on the Teams. And apologies from Councillor Helen Whitcroft.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are you happy with me to sign the minutes from the last planning applications meeting of the 17th of April, or do you have any comments to add to it? Do any of the members have any declarations of interest they need to state before we start? Sure.
Thank you, Chair. I had an email from a resident reference the second item on the agenda tonight, but I come here with an open mind.
I think we all did.
Yeah.
You did too?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I got that one, but I also got numerous contacts on the first item on the agenda, the Land at Snows ride. From both sides, I've had leaflets through my letterbox because I live 0.4 of a mile away from the site, and I've had people stop me in the street, phone calls, emails, and every other possible type of communication. Thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've spoken to some residents regarding item 5 on the agenda. I've also met some residents at the application site, but I've come with no predetermined view on that application.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Correspondence from items 1 and 2.
Councillor Wheeler.
Just to say I've had numerous contacts on the Land at Snows ride, Windlesham. I'm obviously not voting on the committee this evening anyway, so I don't think it's got any particularly material matters for my attendance this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple. Dr. Davis is my GP at the All Saints Lightwater practice, which is relevant to item 1. I'm a lifelong member of the National Trust for Scotland, and my spouse is an NHS employee.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phelan-Cook, how could I miss you?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of declarations of interest, please. Obviously, I work in the early years sector, and I have also provided ward councillor grants to early years settings in Watchett's ward, and I am speaking to item 5 on the agenda.
Thank you. David Whitcroft.
I've had representations about items 4 and 5. Thank you.
Councillor Tedder.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I didn't get any of the recent papers about Snows Ride, but I did go to an exhibition probably about 2 years ago when this first started.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. I think that's everybody. The first planning application on the agenda tonight is item 4, Land at Snows Ride in Windlesham. I know there's a big public interest. Thank you so much for coming. It's good for you to be here to support your communities. I would like to point out on the first application, it's an outline application. If it's granted tonight, it will be going to the Secretary of State for them to review it, and then it will come back to the council on the conditions that may or may not be agreed tonight, just so you're aware. Neville, you'd like to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to the land east of Snows Ride, Windlesham. Outline planning permission is sought with all matters reserved other than the means of access for mixed residential development comprising up to 154 integrated retirement community units, use class C2, 33 C3 dwellings, of which 23 would be affordable apartments and 10 custom and self-build units, together with service land for a GP surgery, the creation of sang, communal facilities and associated landscaping and parking. There are some updates to the report as set out in the update sheet. These largely relate to some minor corrections in the report and slight amendments to the conditions, as well as a further letter of support from the ICB. The site measures approximately 16 hectares in size and is sited to the south of the A30 London Road and east of Snows Ride. It is an open greenfield site with a single agricultural barn to the northeast. The site falls outside of the settlement boundary, which is situated to the other side of Snows Ride. It is designated as Greenbelt and falls within a flood zone 1. The trees to the southeast corner of the site are protected by tree preservation orders. That are the trees to this corner over here, and the settlement boundaries over on the other side of Snows Ride here. Access to the site is currently via field gates to the northeast of the site and from Snows Ride. All the various images shown will show a view in the winter time on the top image and from the same location a view in the summer. The top image is taken within the field looking across it. As we can see, the field is free from development and largely open with no significant changes within the site between winter and summer. The below two pictures are taken from Lavershot Lodge looking towards the site on London Road. The site is bounded by tall, dense, mature vegetation to this boundary, and whilst there are some glimpses into the site during the winter time, this is limited. And during the summertime, the dense vegetation restricts views into the site. The top photo is taken from London Road, directly to where the proposed access would be. Again, some fleeting glimpses into the site during the winter time, with no real views during the summer. The bottom pictures are taken from the Snows Ride, London Road junction. During the winter, the coverage here is a little more open, although there are still mature trees in place, which during the summertime largely restrict any clear views into the site. The top image is taken close to Snows Paddock. Again, there is a presence of mature tall trees which obscure views into the site, particularly during the summer months. The below images from Windlesham Court show a less dense coverage to the boundary, albeit this is a private vehicle access road solely for the residents of Windlesham Court. The proposal is for outline development with all matters aside from access reserved. The proposed vehicular access egress will be provided via London Road and Snows Ride, as shown by the red arrows, with a single access through road through the site. That's the red arrow access here and here. 3 pedestrian entrances would be provided along Snows Ride. That's over here, here and here. Whilst the existing field gate accesses over here and over here would also be retained. The proposal essentially provides 3 forms of housing. The 154 integrated retirement community housing, referred to as IRC, which would be subject to eligibility criteria and various provisions as set out in the report and Annex B, all of which would be built into the Section 106 agreement. This has a use class C2 and would include the associated ancillary community facilities. There would be 23 C3 use class affordable apartments in the form of discounted market sale units, and there would also be 10 custom and self-build units. There would also be the publicly accessible sang, which would offset the SBA impact of the development, as well as providing wider benefit to the public in the form of green space. So the IRC development would be all the development around here. The 23 affordable apartments would be over here, and the 10 self-custom build units over here. By very nature of the quantum of development on this open parcel of land, there will be harm to the character of the area and the openness of the green belt. The degree of harm, however, is tempered by the site's context, with the site benefiting from mature vegetation to all boundaries, as shown in the previous slides, and is siting to the edge of the settlement, as well as the inclusion of the large green space. The density of the development would follow the gradual reduction that we see in the village, with a density of 82 dwellings per hectare found towards Bosman Drive over here, before dropping down to 27 dwellings per hectare around Tudor Close and Snow's Paddock over here, whilst within the site, excluding the Sang, the density would be of 25 dwellings per hectare. The very nature of IRC development is that it promotes community and social cohesion with reduced travelling distances and easy access, resulting in a tighter grain to the IRC part of the development, before the density loosens up towards the edge of the site where the self-build development is found. The design of the Sang, which wraps around the site, ensures that the site retains a degree of openness along London Road to the east of the site and Snows Ride to the south of the site. The proposal would be subject to a parameter plan setting out the maximum ground level to ridge heights. All dwellings would stand at 2-storey level. The 4 apartment blocks, the GP surgery, the self-build units would be at 2.5 stories with accommodation in the roof space, whilst the clubhouse building would be up to 3 stories in height. These are the maximum heights proposed. These show some illustrative site sections. The first image shows the views from Snows Ride, the second from London Road, and the third from Windlesham Court, the private access road. Given the prospective heights of the development, noting the extensive tall mature trees to the boundaries of the site, views of the development would not be extensive from the public vantage points. These show illustrative sections through the site. Again, the height of the development and the boundaries are likely to restrict views in and out of the site. These are some indicative CGIs of the proposed development and precedent development for which the style and design of the development could follow, which are considered of a high quality. So just to recap, the proposal would provide 154 IRC units, 23 affordable homes and 10 self-build development. The IRC development would be subject to various provisions and eligibility criteria as set out in Appendix B, which includes an age restriction of 65, although typical admittance is 70 plus, 24-hour on-site support, minimum of 2 hours personal care, access to community facilities, etc. The affordable housing would be made up of discounted market sales units, which the MPPF defines as providing a minimum discount of 20% below local market sale values. The applicant would provide a discount of 30% rather than 20%, whilst the discount is secured in perpetuity for future prospective buyers. This would also be subject to local eligibility criteria. The self and custom build units would then be sold on to those on the existing register. The proposal would include service land to provide a GP surgery and an associated car park. Frimley ICB have confirmed their support of the proposal, indicating that this would provide a significant opportunity to address the long-standing and growing primary care pressures across the Surrey Heath. They set out NHS premises schemes can take between 8 to 10 years to progress from the initial scoping to delivery, and therefore request extended term to deliver this. Condition 1 reflects this extended term. Without this extended period, there would be a risk to provide such a facility. The proposal, whilst at outline stage, indicates 1 vehicle space per IRC in affordable home development, with 2 spaces per self and custom build development, although due to the nature of self and custom build development, the parking would be subject to the builder's wants. This would be in line with Surrey County Council guidance. There would be a carpool service available to IRC residents, servicing trips to local amenities and facilities, i.e. supermarket, hospital visits, etc. EV charging points would be provided in line with Surrey County guidance. The proposal would also include various highway improvements secured by planning condition, including the creation of a footpath to Snows Ride, which currently does not benefit from a continuous path alongside the site, a traffic regulation order to reduce the speed limit on Snows Ride to 30 miles per hour, as well as improvement to the existing bus stops. It's useful to set out how grey belt development is considered. Grey belt is simply a definition within the MPPF, similar to previously developed land, for example. In itself, it is not an assessment of whether development is appropriate or not. The grey belt definition is as shown. It relates to land whether previously developed or not, does not contribute strongly to select 3 of the 5 purposes of the green belt, purposes A, B, and D. The land at Grove End appeal is a material consideration. The inspector concluded in that appeal that Windlesham and Bagshot were villages and not towns, and therefore the purposes A, B and D of the Greenbelt were not engaged. The PPG makes clear that for each of these purposes, villages are not relevant. The proposal would make no strong contribution towards the prevention of Sunningdale and Camberley, the nearest towns, merging. The site would therefore be considered Greybelt development. Again, Greybelt is only a definition. The assessment of whether Greybelt land is appropriate development or not is set out within, it is subject to paragraph 155 and 156 of the MPPF. Changes to the MPPF earlier this year make it clear that all parts of 155 need to be met. As the site is Greybelt, it meets part A of 155. As per the report, there is a demonstrable unmet need in terms of the Council's 5-year housing line supply position, amongst other needs, and therefore part B is met. The site is located to the edge of the settlement boundary, can be accessed by foot, bus or car, and therefore would be considered sustainable in this context, and therefore part C is met. Part D refers to the golden rules applicable to major development only. 156A requires affordable housing to be provided at 15 percentage points above the local plan requirements. Our local plan does not require any affordable housing for C2 development, so to meet the golden rules, it should provide 15% affordable housing for the IRC development, which it does not. It therefore fails this leg. Part B sets out the necessary improvements to local infrastructure. This would include the highway improvements which the development provides. Therefore, Part B is met. Part C refers to green spaces. Notwithstanding the saying, the site would also provide various pockets of open green space on site, which would satisfy this test. As the development does not provide 15% affordable housing for the IRC development, it would not satisfy all the tests of paragraph 156 and would therefore be considered inappropriate development within the Greenbelt, although weight can still be afforded to the development where it does accord with the other various legs. As set out in the report, there is also some harm to the character and appearance of the area, the openness of the Greenbelt and encroachment upon the countryside, whilst the mix of affordable housing would not be in line with policy recommendations. No other harm has been identified. As the development is inappropriate, we therefore have to consider whether the overall benefits of the proposal would be taken in isolation or together constitute very special circumstances. When considering the weighting given to each benefit, the starting point is consideration against the development plan. For example, a development which provides a policy requirement provision would not in isolation be considered a very special circumstance. Case law confirms that benefits can be considered in combination to amount to very special circumstances. Appeal decisions have typically shown that substantial weight is given to housing where there is a lack of 5-year housing land supply and where there is an unmet need towards any said provision. In the Land at Grove End appeal, substantial weight was given to the provision of housing due to the Council's 5-year housing land supply position and, amongst other factors, outweighed the harm to the character and appearance of the area and harm to the Greenbelt. The appeal site was also considered Greybelt development. As the Council has a shortfall in providing a 5-year housing land supply, there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development, indicating that planning permission should be granted as set out in paragraph 11D of the MPPF, unless adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The key words here being significantly and demonstrably. Similar to the Land at Grove End appeal, the Council remains unable to demonstrate the 5-year housing land supply position, and therefore the provision of housing attracts substantial weight. There is also a significant outstanding need for housing with care in the borough, particularly in light of Surrey Heath's ageing demographics. This also attracts substantial weight. The provision of a GP surgery and the financial contribution towards the ICB, where there are no requirements to do so, also present substantial benefits, whilst the well-documented extensive health and well-being benefits of the IRC development, i.e. reducing pressure on the NHS, the social benefits, etc., also attract substantial weight. Moderate weight is then given to the release of 154 homes back into the market, with research suggesting occupiers of IRC development typically reside in under-occupied homes. The Council also has a reliance on windfall sites like this to come forward to meet its older persons' need, with no specific policy strategy to meet the unmet need. This is given moderate weight. proposal would also provide affordable housing, which there is a general need for, provision of self-build homes, which the council has a duty to grant planning permission for, and the excess of B&G requirements, all of which attach moderate weight, whilst limited weight is given to the other benefits, i.e. the economic benefits of the proposal, the provision of SANG, the highway improvements, and the provision of facilities on site. Paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged, and therefore there is a presumption in favour of granting planning permission unless the harm would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Weighing up the substantial benefits of the proposal against the identified harm is considered the very special circumstances weigh in favour of granting permission. Specifically, the proposal would make a significant contribution towards our housing land supply, which, as set out in the various appeal decisions, is a significant and largely overriding factor in granting permission. In addition, the proposal makes a significant contribution towards the council's unmet need of extra care development, approximately 36% of our need. It also needs to be stressed that if the development provided 15% affordable housing for the IRC development, it would not be considered an appropriate development, and the harm would be limited to that on the character and appearance of the area and the mix of affordable housing. The proposal does not result in any other harm, and no objections have been raised by any of the statutory consultees. The proposal also provides various wider community benefit through the provision of SANG, highway improvements, communal facilities, as well as the B&G. The proposal is therefore recommended for the grant of permission subject to a legal agreement securing the provisions of the C2 development, the delivery and long-term management of the SANG, the affordable housing, the financial contributions towards the SAM, the ICB, travel plan auditing and the habitat management monitoring, together with the provision of service land for the ICB. As the development is a departure from the local plan, any grant of permission would be subject to referral to the Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, Neville. We now have several public speakers. Can I ask Mr. Pat Gaffey to come up? Right at the front. Hi. Mr. Gaffey, you have 4 minutes to speak. You'll be prompted when you have a minute left. The little device in front of you, if you press the button on that, the red light comes up. You can just start whenever you're ready to.
Okay. I'm here to object and give voice to the nearly 300 residents, our parish council and the Windlesham Society who comprehensively objected and had their objections overlooked or disregarded. The application accepts this as inappropriate development and seeks to overturn this by proving very special circumstances. A number of points on why this is flawed. Demand for this type of housing is not there, evidenced by the fact that 10 facilities within 3 miles of the site have all got significant capacity now. In fact, the market for these high-cost and non-essential homes is saturated. And whilst I take the point about 5-year plans demonstrating a need for ageing people, these are expensive to buy and expensive in terms of their surcharge charges. They do not serve the needs of the ordinary working people of this borough. This may well be viewed as a commercial risk for the developer, but there's evidence that what they do in order to fill these up is start to reduce the age limits. I drove past some this evening on my way here. Reduce services or other mitigations to sell them. So what we end up with, or the potential we end up with, is a housing estate which would never have been approved. Additionally, the 154 houses forecast to be released into the housing stock locally is not only highly theoretical, because homes could be released anywhere in the country, and it is therefore flawed. These cannot comprise very special circumstances. The doctor's surgery attracts some serious weight. It's not in the gift of the developer, nor indeed the council, to deliver a surgery. They are developing a shell of a building with at least a 5-year planning horizon. The proposed surgery is highly speculative, anticipating the NHS to actually set it up and fund its operation at a cost of millions. As such, as a highly speculative development with a low probability of certainty, as evidenced by previous plans that have come before this committee, where new surgeries have been promised and then, having got approval, subsequently withdrawn, citing costs and a lack of demand. Again, these are not special services. I also note that easing pressure on NHS is cited as a benefit. I do not believe this is a material planning consideration. It should be removed from this application. I'm unsure of what the proposed inducement to the ICB is supposed to fund. Windlesham is one of the few villages in Surrey to have voted on and implemented a neighbourhood plan. The indicative upper limit of sustainable development of 50 over the life of the plan has been exceeded by a factor of 3, with 160 dwellings approved. The neighbourhood planning policy was created to give local residents a direct say in the development and growth of their local area, not a plan to be disregarded and run roughshod over to prioritise the narrow interests of a local landowner trying to monetise the site in conjunction with an investment property speculator. As a final comment, one would ask, what price local democracy? I think the residents of Windlesham deserve an answer to that.
Thank you, Pat. You
I've
finished?
Yeah.
Just press your button. Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for Pat in a planning capacity? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Pat Lewis. I'll ask you to come up. Hello, Pat. Same as previously, you have 4 minutes. You'll be noted when it gets to 1 minute. The little machine in front of you, when you're ready, press the button, red light comes on, and your time starts from then.
Hello. Thank you for your time today. I'm here to represent our village, Windlesham, as a resident. And indeed, with the other 300 plus residents that had already given their objections to the original application. It seems the objections in place from these residents, from also the Windlesham Society and also from Windlesham Parish Council with a comprehensive report, seem to be overlooked and not taken into account. It's very disappointing that Mr. Ram has recommended an approval of this application. My question here is, does democracy not really count these days? I'd like to highlight a few areas you should really be taking into account when making your decision. Firstly, and no shying away from this is Greenbelt land. Greenbelt land. I think the purpose of Greenbelt land in our country is being overlooked and forgotten. And the reasons for its existence in the first place is to prevent urban sprawl, to prevent towns and districts merging into another, and very importantly, one that often gets now overlooked, is the well-being of our occupants. And after the war, it was determined that people needed to have a place to go to view, to rest, without being overawed by development and businesses. Secondly, may I highlight to you the density of the areas of Surrey, the county, Surrey Heath, and indeed Little Old Windlesham. Density being the measurement of population per unit of land in the area. Surrey County, 1,679 square kilometres, equates to 724 people per square kilometre. Surrey Heath, 95 square kilometres, 959 people per square kilometre. And again, Little Old Windlesham, 22.4 square kilometres, 178 people per square kilometre. That's already before taking into account any of these additional developments. That includes Heath Park Woods, sorry. These new additional properties would constitute at least double the amount of extra people going into this density equation. Thirdly, where I feel strongly about, 3 developments are affecting the traffic and infrastructure of this small village. The village in its current format is struggling to cope with volumes of traffic, speed of vehicles, and indeed the infrastructure can't cope. We have a working and implemented Windlesham neighbourhood plan, which already exceeds its limits before these developments even start.
1 minute left.
Last but not least, the point of offering a doctor's building in this development unfortunately does not cut the mustard with me. There has been at least 3 attempts to my knowledge of providing a doctor's surgery and health satellite buildings, and they've never come to fruition. There quite clearly is a call for a doctor's surgery or satellite in Windlesham, as it proves difficult for the elderly to get to Lightwater, and parking in Lightwater surgery is atrocious. It's quite clear Lightwater surgery are wanting to expand, as it seems as they have shown an interest in this development. Could I ask the question, there is a community building at Heath Park Woods which has already been accepted and no one owns it yet. Why can't the doctor surgery be there?
That's time.
Okay, and then my end was my plea for this application. Have the conviction, make the right decisions without being led by the government. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. Members, do you have any questions for the Speaker? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. When you talked about traffic, does that include a concern about road safety as well as sort of congestion?
Most definitely. Most definitely. We've got issues already at the moment without the extra cars that will go into the developments.
Thank you.
Councillor Tedder.
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. You've actually answered most of my questions because I wanted you just to please confirm. We have, as you say, in Heath Park Woods, a development, a building that was going to be a doctor's surgery. You don't believe that, according to what you've just said, has been defined as a doctor's surgery? It's just a community building?
As I understand it, and it's only hearsay at the moment, I understand, is that there is to be a community building of what nature we don't know. And it's up for consultation at the moment with the residents, so I would presume that the doctors also can put themselves forward.
Go ahead.
So, if you were in Windlesham, which is the closer to walk, Lightwater or Snows Ride? In your opinion?
Lightwater or Snows Ride? So,
in the new development in Snows Ride, and you were at the chemist in Windlesham, and you've got to walk because there's no buses. We know that. We already know there's no buses to get to Lightwater to the surgery. So you walk. So which would you say was the
if
closest?
I'm walking from the chemist, which is the centre of the village, to go to Lightwater or Snows Ride, I would say they're pretty equal. What would be nearer is Heath Park Woods.
Are you also aware that when Orchard Manor was given planning permission, there was a doctor's surgery going in there which was greeted by the village with great delight because that would be wonderful. But in fact, it never came to fruition because they couldn't find a doctor to actually commit to go in. So I do have my doubts about the... Thank you.
I totally agree, because also there was the Windmill Field estate that was built, had the promise of a doctor's surgery, and that never came to fruition either. So it beggars belief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rob Henderson, an agent for the application. Rob, I'm sure you've done this before, so button in front of you, 4 minutes. You'll get a notice at 1 minute when it's left.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, everyone. Yes, I'm Rob Henderson. I'm the agent for the applicant. The applicant is Retirement Villages Group. Retirement Villages Group is backed by AXA. It's an owner and operator of retirement villages across the UK. And I've visited a number of them. They operate at a very high standard. I've never seen any evidence of any kind of dilution in the quality of the product over the passage of time. In fact, quite the opposite. They have a village at Cranley, which, as of today, 276 units, was fully occupied. There is demand for this, and it will result in freeing up. There's plenty of evidence. It's been shared with your officers with regard to the way in which it does free up family homes in the surrounding area, and that has, in many other planning decisions, planning application appeals, been accepted as being a contributor to very special circumstances, along with the nature of the residential use with care. So I would just ask that you do take that on board. This planning application, we intend to attain and will set a very, very high bar for the quality of development in the district. It's been devised to address local needs that are explicitly identified in the evidence that underpins your emerging local plan and in the Windlesham local plan, neighbourhood plan, which refers specifically to the need for retirement homes repeatedly. The briefing document we sent to you earlier in the week sets out the proposal and the key benefits, and I hope you've had the opportunity to review it, but we're happy to respond to any questions you have, and I have a number of my colleagues with me should you have any specific or technical questions. But in broad summary, there is an identified need in the evidence base within your local plan and an unmet need for everything that we are proposing to construct on this site. Each of the components of the development will constitute a significant social benefit, and in addition, the development will achieve net zero carbon and at least 20% BNG. I'd like to thank Naval and his team for their hard work. Their assessment of the proposal in the context of the current policy position is right. The recommendation to grant is the outcome of extensive and diligent work along with your officers, Natural England, ICB Fremley, the Highway Authority and many other stakeholders. The report is correct that the revised NPPF, the lack of a 5-year housing land supply and the under-provision of specialist homes for older people are fundamental considerations for you. The land is grey belt by definition, it's well contained, its development will not significantly affect the overall function of the green belt in Surrey Heath. And on that basis, with the benefits that are outlined in the report, the assessment of the acceptability of the development on the green belt is correct. Your officers are right to advise you that there should be a presumption in favour of the development of the land. It is acceptable as a matter of principle. Their judgment is underpinned by a number of comparable applications and appeal decisions, both before and since the National Planning Policy update. Thanks. Right. Doctor's surgery. There is a deficiency in primary care. We know that previous iterations have failed to be delivered. We have been extremely close working with the ICB to make sure that does not happen again in this case. And Naval has direct correspondence from the ICB in the last couple of days who unfortunately weren't able to attend the meeting but wished to make clear that they are on board with this and aligned with our ambitions for it. The SANG is going to be a fantastic asset for the existing community. There are 366 existing homes within walking distance of that SANG that will benefit from it. We will deliver it. We will ensure that the mechanisms for the management of it present no risk to any authority in terms of cost. I could carry on, but I won't. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Henderson? Councillor Tedder first.
Thank you. How many patients, good evening. How many patients do you think this surgery is going to support?
So we don't have a number for patients. We estimate that the capacity of the facility would be circa 10 consultation rooms. As I say, we've been in direct consultation with the ICB on it. They're very excited about it as a prospect and very keen to work with us to ensure it's delivered. What we're actually looking to do is the commitment is that we will deliver serviced land, and that land will be transferred to the NHS on essentially on a peppercorn. But the facility that the NHS build will, at the appropriate time, be the facility that they deem they need.
Apologise, Mr. Chair. Could you repeat that? I'm not sure I heard what I thought I heard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there a particular bit?
Yes, it was the bit about the land and handing it to the NHS. It was.
Yeah. So the proposal with regard to when we talk about GP surgery, what we are proposing to do is there is a section of the site which has been sort of essentially allocated to be the GP surgery land. The land will be provided with access and sort of utilities and services, and will be signed over to the NHS, ICB, and any partner practice, but as service land to enable them to construct the facility that they deem to be necessary to address the primary care needs in the area. But the only discussions I've been party to about capacity have been circa 10 consulting rooms. Light water surgery have had some involvement in that discussion. There is no final commitment to who the delivery partner will be, because the NHS has separate processes that it has to follow to be able to determine that, which would fall entirely out of our control. But as I say, Naval has further information from the ICB around this if you need it.
I'm back on that, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to. So what you're actually saying is you're not going to you're not actually going to build a surgery. What you're actually doing is supplying a piece of land which the National Health Service, in the fullness of time, and we know how stretched they are, will at some point build a surgery. Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, yes.
The rest of my questions are superfluous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tedder. Any other members? Do you have any? Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. Obviously, the most interesting part of this application is the GP surgery, and I'm sure that's a lot of what we're going to be discussing tonight. I'm just wondering, of the other applicants' retirement villages, have any of them delivered GP surgeries that are open and running at the moment or in the process of being delivered? Thanks.
No, that's not a question that I'm going to be in a position to answer, but I do have representatives of retirement villages in the room. So with your consent, Chairman, may I extend that question?
Please.
Behind me? I've just had an answer from Alex Williams, who's from RVG. He's confirmed that they haven't, to date, included a GP surgery in any of the villages to date.
Can I follow up on that, please, Chair? Was there any plans to, at the initial stage, with any of them that have since, let's say, fallen through, or is this just the first time that retirement villages are proposing to include a GP surgery? Thanks. Yes, so with the other sites, when they went to planning permission, when they went to planning approval, were there proposals to create GP surgeries that haven't been delivered, or was that just not an idea for the others? Thanks.
That existed,
Okay, thank you.
I wonder if, sorry, if I may, Chairman, just to supplement that, the proposal to include the land for the GP surgery in this particular case was very specific to the acknowledgement of the pre-existing needs in relation to GP surgery, and obviously the other components of the development as well, reflecting the pre-existing situation in Windlesham.
Councillor Wilson, then Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Just to quickly clarify something, you made comments about this application being in accordance with adopted plans and things like the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan. But it says in the report here that this would, if it was granted, it would depart from the development plan and to such an extent that it would have to then be referred to the Secretary of State. So can you explain that?
Through you, Chairman, I think stop me if I'm overstepping the mark, really, in terms of what Naval should be answering, and I'll give you my opinion on that. You have a slightly complicated situation in terms of the weight that you attribute to various different, at the moment, conflicting policies. So we have national planning policy, we have an adopted local plan, and we have an emerging local plan, and the emerging local plan is starting to gain some weight, but probably not determinant weight. So I think I've probably referred to the local plan in the context of affordable housing delivery. But as a matter of generality, there is currently a conflict in terms of development on greenbelt land between your adopted local plan and national planning policy. National planning policy from December 2024 has created essentially a new environment for the assessment of development proposals on greenbelt land, which is not in accordance with your adopted local plan, but essentially takes primary weight.
Okay, thanks. I think, as you say, we'll probably be discussing this with the officers later. Thank you.
Councillor White?
You missed one important plan, which is the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan, but that's not my question. Going back to the doctor's surgery, can you honestly say there is absolutely no guarantee whatsoever that that surgery will see the light of day? You are just putting in the facility for it, maybe, but there's no guarantee that it's going to happen.
First, I apologise. I did mention the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan a couple of times in my earlier presentation. The question that I was answering from Councillor Wilson was very specific to the local plan, so my apologies with that. My client is absolutely committed to the delivery of that, to facilitating that, and the commitment that would be written into the planning obligation would be that the land cannot be used for anything else, that they will provide it as serviced land, so there will be an access to it, the infrastructure will be placed on the land, but they're not in a position to build the surgery because it's outside of, it's for the NHS to determine what that should be. So we will, as the applicant, we can go as far as we possibly can, and one of those is that I had quite detailed conversations with your officers about extending the delivery time frame for it, because one of the reasons why previous commitments have fallen away was because the NHS wasn't able to get its ducks in a row quickly enough to be able to get it over the line before the planning permission for it essentially expired. So we have, in consultation with the ICB, who weren't as I understand it, weren't as closely involved in those earlier projects as they are with this one. They had asked us, we have consulted with them and they've said, if you can persuade the planning authority to push out the time frame, because we think that it may take us 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to have gone through all of the processes that we need to go through to be able to bring this to fruition. That will give us the very best chance to be able to address the primary care deficiency in this area. So they see this as the best opportunity to address the deficiency in the area, and we are doing as much as we can to assist with that.
Can I come back? So you're asking for an extension on the time limit, so that could go on forever and ever. So we never get the doctor's surgery, but the land is allocated to the NHS forever with nothing happening. What happens then?
So I should probably clarify the financial payment contribution that the application and the development, the remainder of the development is making towards the ICB is mitigating entirely the effects of the demands on the NHS that are arising from the development. So the proposal to provide the GP surgery land is additional. It is there's no benefit at all to the applicant in doing that, other than to try and sort of embed a GP surgery into a cohesive intergenerational community. But it's not it is solely a benefit of the development. It's not required to mitigate the development at all.
So what I said originally is there's no absolute guarantee that that doctor's surgery will materialise. You're just providing the land just in case.
We're providing the land. we're putting in place legal controls that it cannot be used for any other purpose. The land will be provided at zero cost. So this is the best possible opportunity to secure that primary care facility in the Windlesham area that is on the table at this point in time. And the applicant, who I represent, is doing as much as they are empowered to do to bring that forward.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett?
You'll be happy to know this is not about GP surgeries. I'll save that for later. 2 questions. I noticed that there's about 14 sites that the Retirement Village Group has got, and there's 5 under development at the moment, obviously including the Windlesham one. How popular are these sites as they stand right now? And I think there was an original application for this for 180 something in the past. This has now gone down to 154. How popular are these sites and how busy are they? And my second question is completely unrelated to that. It's reference. I notice in the paper there is the comment about upgrading or updating the bus stops. From my very brief investigation into the 500 bus, it doesn't come out very often. And in fact, if you left that bus stop on a Saturday, you'd probably get stranded. Because there's very few buses. Now, I know that's not your problem, but have you had a conversation with County about the whole idea of, if you're upgrading a bus stop, which I'm guessing is going to be the developer that's going to do that, or is that going to be down to County? Because there isn't enough buses, in my opinion, to actually cover that. So that may not be one for you, because it may not be you that's doing it, but I'll throw it out to you while you're here.
Okay, the first question was about the popularity of the villages. Logically, I'm going to kind of push that one back behind me, but I'm guessing what you're asking is, are they busy? Are they full? Yeah. Well, certainly the question I asked was, what's the nearest one? And Cranley is the nearest one, and as of this week, 276 apartments are all fully occupied. What I'm also aware of, because I do a lot of work in the sector, is that there is a very particular kind of way in which they are occupied, which means that unlike, say, a sort of a standard residential development, where you might sort of you start building and immediately you're able to sell units off plan and people will buy them before they're built and they'll move into them while they're still other ones are still being built. That's not how a sort of retirement community would work. In the main retirement community, you have to have kind of like put in the investment. You've built a lot of the facilities. You're building a substantial portion of the development before the first one would be occupied. So to that extent, if somebody were sort of standing outside a development that looked like it had been under construction for perhaps a period of time, and it might not look like it was kind of significantly occupied because that's particularly the nature of the model and the product. But as I say, I'm told that certainly the village at Cranley is essentially sold out and fully occupied. But if you like, I'll pass the question back if the gents want to add anything to that. Second question, upgrade to the bus stops. The proposal is that we essentially make a contribution under Section 278. The county will undertake the works to improve the bus stops. We're not seeking to influence the quality or frequency of the service itself, albeit through obviously just the increase in the number of people that might be using a service often will contribute to the viability of the service and can have the effect of improving frequency anyway. It's slightly divergent from your question, and I think your question was more about the kind of the service, but we, as the entity itself, the retirement component of the development also has sort of communal transport options within it as well. So our residents would have access to communal transport facilities separate from the bus services, albeit they will use those bus services, and I think they will contribute to the viability of it.
Yeah, carry through.
I completely forgot this, and it's random. So I noticed they're going to put a gym in. How popular is a gym with a population of 65 plus? I mean, looking at the stats, over 72 seem to be really popular. Do you see gyms as being really popular as you're putting one in?
I'm going to pass this one back as well, but again, I will stick by two Pennything. So my experience is that the residents of the development will all have been subject to a needs assessment and will all need to have been in receipt at least a certain degree of care. But the aim of the village is actually to to enhance wellness and prolong wellness. And so the leisure facilities on the site are gymnasium, but often and pool. But often those facilities are used in conjunction with a sort of almost like a physiotherapy regime. So they're as well as just, I don't know, bodybuilding, if you like, or but it is part of the sort of the well-being ambitions of the development, and I think they are very popular. But gents, do you want to add to that?
We've got Councillor Wheeler online. I've got a question to ask.
I have, thank you, Chair. I wasn't absolutely sure if I was going to be allowed to ask it, so that's marvellous, thank you. I'm just interested to know from the last speaker who said that all of the properties in Cranley were sold out. According to their website, there are 14 properties for sale at the moment, and there's a big difference between Cranley and Windlesham, in that Cranley is described as, again, according to their own website, the largest village in Surrey. And that the site is just outside and within easy walking distance. So I can understand that might be a very popular one, but as I said, I'm not sure whether we're slightly inaccurate this evening in the chamber or whether your website is inaccurate, but there are 14 properties for sale on the website at the moment. I just wondered if he could come back and comment on that, please. And the other thing that I would like his comment on is, although I appreciate that the piece of land would be there in perpetuity for the NHS to use, could he confirm, please, whether or not the NHS has signed any form of formal agreement with the developer for this piece of land? And if so, how long the tenure of the peppercorn rent would be? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I'm going to revert to my clients behind me again in relation to kind of your particular query about availability of units in Cranley.
Chair, would the speaker be able to summarise that? Because Councillor Wheeler, we don't think could have heard the answer because it wasn't on. Councillor Wheeler probably couldn't hear the answer.
I didn't hear any of that, no. I didn't realise that he was speaking.
Summarise that, please.
Yes.
Do you want to summarise that?
Thank
Councillor?
you. Yeah, through you, Chair. So, Councillor Wheeler, my colleague in the room, who's employee of RVG, said that I think the units you may be looking at are kind of essentially resale. So, like any sort of residential environment, there will always be some churn. So these are properties where the initial resident has, for whatever reason, placed their unit back on the market for sale. Does that make sense?
It does. And the second part about the signed agreement with either the ICB or Dr. Davis, who is obviously a private individual currently based at Lightwater Surgery, because as we all know, GPs do not have an NHS contract, or they're not NHS employees.
Yeah, no, there is no contract in place, nor would that be appropriate, because the NHS have confirmed, and your planning officers have been advised by the ICB consultee that there is a process that they have to follow as part of the health estate acquisition processes. So whilst they are very excited by the opportunity, there are a number of steps that the NHS have to take, which is outside of this, once planning permission is essentially granted, to be able to kind of move things forward. So no, we've put a place, we will, through the legal agreement, put in place a control that it cannot be essentially used for any other purpose. And then it's for the NHS to essentially, and the ICB to move it forward, and they're hopeful that they can do that.
So to Councillor White's point, then what we've got is a piece of land with services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important because a lot of members are homing on this point, and I think the planning agent has tried to explain this in terms of the different steps and criteria they have to go through. Members are on your agenda packs. You've got item 4H, which basically explains the different steps they have to go through and to get sign off. And I would suggest to members to actually carefully read that as part of your papers, because that sets out the different criteria they have to go through to get sign off to actually get the doctor's surgery in place. So I just want to make that clear to members to actually read that document. Thank you.
Sorry, Sean, just got some others. Councillor Wilson, Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to the point about the demand and the number of properties that are available at the moment, I think RVG has got 107 properties across its group for sale at the moment. Do you know roughly what percentage that is of the total amount?
I don't, Councillor Wilson. I'm more than happy to pass that one back, gents. 107 properties currently for sale. What proportion of all of the units across the estate would that be?
Well, that would be roughly 10%, which is quite normal.
Okay, and just for Councillor Wheeler's benefit and anyone online, it's roughly 10%. Thank you.
Councillor White, do you have any questions that haven't been covered already or don't cover that?
Yeah, it's a different question. You've got your age limit as 65 plus. The previous development in Bagshot started off at 70. It's now down to 60. I think they're going to be lowering it to 55. So therefore, there would be a problem with car parking on the site because 55 to 60-year-olds still drive. So do most 65-year-olds. But there doesn't seem to be adequate parking on this site for that sort of development. You're taking for granted that people are only going to use either one car or no car because of the travel infrastructure that is in place that doesn't exist. So there's no buses, nothing's within walking distance, so people will have to have cars. So is there any chance that you will stick to the 65 plus, or will that be lowered?
Through you, Chair. We'll stick to the 65.
Councillor Garrett. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is a point of order with respect to procedures. My understanding was that members who are present that are not part of the committee in the room at the time don't have constitutional rights to question the other speakers at the time. Could we check that, please? Because it feels like not all members are equal sometimes in this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll check that with Democratic Services. In the meantime, do you have any more questions? Councillor Tedder.
With regards to, can you tell me where the bus stops are and how often the buses run, roughly? I think.
Do we still need? Sorry, I wasn't sure whether that might be. You may have just been given the answer there. The bus stop improvements are essentially on London Road on the northern perimeter of the site. And no, I don't, off the top of my head, know how frequently the buses run. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Do you have any further questions? Thank you, Mr Henderson. We have one further speaker. That's an interested councillor. Councillor Sean MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just confirm when I'll get an answer to my constitutional point, because it could affect proceedings later. So we just need to be clear what rules we're playing under.
Thanks, Councillor MacDonald. So under Part 4, Section D, and then Part 4, Section E. So Section E relating to the public speaking and asking questions of the public speaker. I believe that the Constitution is silent on the matter. As you've sort of mentioned, or I think you know yourself, that under Part 4, Section D, there's the element about timing in terms of when we get to the debate, how much time each non-committee member can have.
Okay, thank you. So your interpretation is that we, as non-members of the committee, we can in future ask questions, but that's something we can obviously...
I think the Constitution's silent on it, so,
no,
and
understood,
I think ultimately the committee's getting more information that way.
Understood. It's just, I think it's been interpreted differently at different times. Okay, thank you very much. Does somebody want to give me the countdown?
We'll time it
ready.
and let you know when you get to a certain amount of time.
Sorry, let me get my laptop woken up if that's okay before, seeing as we had a... In fact, it's completely shut down. There we go. Isn't that just life? No, it's woken up again. Just 1 second, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to Mr Raman and the other officers for preparing such a clear report to follow and analyse, though we may respectfully have to disagree on the way forward. Committee, thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. Thankfully, I'm free of the burden you carry to judge this application in line with its many failings and few merits against the material planning considerations allowed under planning law. I am able to freely and do so as a resident and temporary steward of our natural environment, as a ward councillor concerned for the health service impact across Lightwater and Windlesham, and as leader of the council in seeking to protect the integrity of the new Surrey Heath local plan, which I voted for and has my signature on it. I will always try to be honest and transparent with residents on all matters possible. If this proposal was for a sustainable, transport designed, biodiversity secured, 100% affordable social rent development to allow key worker families a place to live and bring new energy with full integration into Windlesham, then I might be arguing in favour. However, I see three main areas of concern in this corporate profit-driven proposal for a standalone retirement compound for the well-off financially and slightly not so well-off physically or mentally. Destruction of the green belt against policy. Failure to provide sustainable transport options against policy, impact on local and regional health services without guaranteed mitigation. Starting with the destruction of the Greenbelt, the offer report is clear. This proposal as it stands is not in line with our local plan, section 1.2. Details that it is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, harming the semi-rural nature and appearance of the surrounding area. 44% of the whole borough is part of the metropolitan Greenbelt, stopping urban sprawl. The relevant policy E8 landscape characteristics, for which this area noted as SX6, Windlesham settled and wooded sandy farmland landscape, is that the key positive landscape attributes should be protected in order to preserve the landscape of the borough. Yesterday, this meant some grand old trees standing guard around a stunning patchwork of prolific buttercups across the expanse of a green meadow. The development is wholly inappropriate and thus unusually will require referral to the Secretary of State, who will have to approve it should you follow the recommendation. It is widely believed, based on current recent case studies across Bagshot, Sunningdale and Ascot, that these types of developments, aimed at the over 65s in theory, are just a Trojan horse, and over time will end up with a new application in this chamber for use by the over 55s, leading to many of the current assumptions being irrelevant. As a physically active over 55 from this Christmas Eve coming, with 2 physiological medical conditions, in addition to the council-induced psychological stress, perhaps I should declare an interest in definitely not wanting to be a target customer. It is also highlighted that 154 under-occupied homes will be brought back into the housing market, which in theory makes sense. However, there is no restriction on the marketing of this development and therefore no evidence that this change would help us in the borough with housing access, or indeed locally in Windlesham. All the pain could be taken locally for no gain. Substantial weight is given to the current gap in this class within the borough, and it is true as of April 2024 we had 406 units still to find in C2 housing with care. However, this application is not providing any affordable units in this class. The relevant topic paper is clear that over the planned period the affordable target for this type of unit is 28% of the total. Assuming to date that a 28% on balance has been delivered in other development, which I severely doubt, this large compound of 154 units, or 38% of our future target, in one small isolated place, will mean that all other future sites will need to deliver 114 affordable units to ensure equity of access going forward, or 45% of the applicable units built. This is clearly nonsense to a reasonable person, and this proposal does not pass the test of our topic paper 4.10.6 of being affordable to persons of all sectors of the population. Moving on to failure to provide sustainable transport options. I note the Surrey County Council Highways Assessment has no objections but a number of minor conditions, but it totally overlooks the isolated location specifics, so defaults to avoiding recommending any major infrastructure changes as usual. A lot of the focus appears to be on car use, which, given the recent coroner reports, is likely to be increasingly challenging for this age group over time to maintain a driving licence, and enhancing access to bus services on the A30, given 0 footpaths towards the village. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the one and only bus service that crisscrosses this area, the White Bus 500 from Staines to Frimley Park Hospital and the Meadows. Monday to Friday there are 5 full services with another 3 restricted to Sunningdale to Bagshot only. Saturdays, all 3 are restrictive. I do hope all the planned residents are hardcore atheists, as there are no services on Sunday at all. Furthermore, given the residents' profile, one might reasonably assume friendly face visits to future neighbours in Frimley Park Hospital, but despite 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily visiting hours, their only window will be 9 to 4 weekdays. So let's hope the people that are ill, needing emotional support, only need it during the weekdays. Anyone needing to go to Heatherwood for a MIDA procedure or St Peter's visiting potentially is left in total limbo without viable public transport. Another reason for calling this a compound is the total lack of infrastructure to support cycling or walking into the village to get access to its services and to help integration into Windlesham. There is no footpath or cycle path along Snows Ride or Hatton Hill, and it regularly is allowed to flood at the junction. There are fantastic opportunities in Windlesham at the Field of Remembrance Cafe, the Sun Pub, the Half Moon Pub, seems to be a trend here, the Windlesham Club and Theatre, and the Parade of Shops, all around 1 mile away, but without a safe path. This is exactly what our local plan topic paper says should be put in place. The American Planning Association states multi-generational and age-friendly communities create a vehicle to bring people together by reducing age segregation and ageism, decrease social isolation and depression and loneliness, and improving wider community cohesion. Research shows 3 out of 4 seniors want more opportunities in their community for people of different ages to get to know each other. Not only does this compound design preclude these interactions on site, but its isolation stops it happening off site too. I note the Surrey County Council condition of reducing the speed limit, and whilst this helps reduce the risk from 90% to 20% of the risk of death from a collision, it is totally at odds with the hierarchy of risk management in aiming for as low as reasonably practicable by encouraging physical separation of people and vehicles first. It is stunning that the Surrey County Council's highway team think that the proposed approach complies with their own policies for sustainable transport within new developments at an acceptable risk level to the residents. However, it also does not comply with IN2 transportation of our local plan, which states, new development presents opportunities designed for sustainable modes of transport, and the Council will seek to ensure, whenever possible, opportunities for sustainable means of transport are provided, including through improved walking and cycling routes. IN2, 1, C and F refers to that specifically. Lastly, moving on briefly to the impact of local and regional health services without mitigation. The local ICBs are in meltdown, with between 50 to 65% cost-saving targets this year, and Frimley is being openly talked about folding into Bob, Heartlands and Hampshire Isle of Wight ICBs respectively, imminently. Any positive context and expressions of intent are incredibly flaky. Any commitments given to date are not rock solid with respect to the GP on-site provision, and we know from other developments often fade away over time. Our excellent shared GP practice in Lightwater closed its satellite in Windlesham over a decade ago, and its doors to new entrants last year due to issues adjacent service providers were having in West End and Chobham. Nevertheless, the physical site is less important than the GPs and the allied healthcare professionals being actually available to provide care, which, unless we build more affordable and social rent homes to make Surrey Heath more cost-effective to live in, won't come. This development will be a major drain on existing resource, both in numbers and needs, on an existing maxed-out GP and related services in our area, so it is totally unviable. Committee and residents, thank you for listening. And to quote Sir Humphrey Appleby of Yes Minister fame, if you are going to do this damn silly thing, don't do it in this damn silly way. Our green belt is there for a reason. When we develop it, and we will have to in order to give our residents homes to thrive in, make sure we are doing it for social benefit, not for financial profit. Make sure it drives community cohesion. And it is sustainable for the planet by encouraging the physical and mental well-being of walking and cycling. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Members, do you have any questions of Councillor MacDonald? Mr. Garrett?
Oh, wrong one. Sorry, thank you. You've taken my part about the bus as well, so I can't speak about it. Very impassioned speech. As a member of this planning committee, having sat here for a while, my concern is if we go against the officer's recommendation, based on the land Grove End, isn't it? Grove End that went to appeal and then obviously was accepted on appeal, we would be putting the council in a position where obviously there's extra costs. Now, I appreciate that's not your decision, that's not, we shouldn't be considering all that, but based on your impassioned speech and the fact that we need housing, etc., I'd just like to get your take on that.
It's not a material planning consideration, unfortunately, Sean. So you have to make a judgment against the material planning considerations.
Committee members, do you have any other questions?
I apologise for my colloquial. Councillor Garrett.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify what you were saying about there not being any safe walking routes down Snows Ride, I know you walk around that area a lot, I do too. Are you aware of the blind bend that's further down Snows Ride? And if the number of cars using Snows Ride is going to double if this goes through, what do you think about the risk to pedestrians going around there? Because you can't see if you're on the right-hand side walking south, you can't see the traffic until it's right on you because there's a wall of a house there and there's no pavement.
So it is one of my regular walking routes from Lightwater. It's about an hour and 15-minute round trip across there and around various paths and stuff. So Councillor Wilson knows the area better than me, but there are very, very short patches of rough terrain which you can walk on. But to be honest, the safest thing to do is walk down the road with the 20% risk of a fatality if somebody hits you. And yes, you're correct, it is blind bends. It is a real shame that there is not better connectivity. As we know, in North Windlesham there is substantial housing, and it was never done before. It should be done to encourage the right behaviours and enjoy the multi-generational opportunities that exist in Windlesham.
We have one more question from Jonathan Quinn, and then we're going to open the floor for the committee.
Thank you. Yeah, so you mentioned obviously walking around that area. Just for a bit of balance, what's your view on the publicly created sang that would be created as a result of this development as an area to walk around? Don't you think that would be a big benefit from this proposal?
Yeah, it's actually, there's mutterings behind me, but I was going to say the same thing. It's incredibly isolated to get to for the reasons I've said, so there would only potentially be benefit for, I think, the residents in that North Windlesham ward or parish ward. For the rest of Windlesham, it would be irrelevant, and quite frankly, Windlesham is blessed with a huge amount of opportunities to walk and behave appropriately with dogs if they're with you. So yeah, I don't think it's a major value add for the community. What would have been a major add for the community was obviously a multi-generational group that could re-energise the village, and that would be a different conversation. But that's not what's being proposed here. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of the officers concerning this application? I've got Councillor Wheeler online first.
Thank you. I'm very happy to defer to the members that are there. And just again, for a point of clarity, it's very unusual for me not to be in the chamber, for which I apologise. There are some points that I would like to make. I would just also like clarity as to whether or not I can take part and speak more than once as part of the debate as it moves forward. The points that I'd like to make are based on the fact that we are going to have reasons to overcome the officer's recommendation for approval. And there are, in my opinion, some fairly major reasons for not approving this application. The officer states in his summing up that this is inappropriate development within the green belt, but which would result in harm, and it would be out of scale with the existing character area. And both of those points are raised in his report. He weighs very heavily on the very special circumstances, one of which is the provision of this type of development. A very quick Google this evening came up within a 5-mile radius, 184 properties, retirement properties, available to people within 5 miles of Windlesham. And Linwood Rise in Sunningdale has actually been, one of the properties there has been available and on the market since 2022. There are 69 properties for sale within 3 miles. And if we were to go to Bagshot, there are 99 within 3 miles of Bagshot. So I'm afraid I don't agree with the officer's report that this type of housing is necessary. If we take to the points that were raised by, sorry, I'm just going to get the right agency. It was the Highways Agency rather than Surrey County Council. They took on board the report and the applicant's calculations of the number of movements per hour, which they said would be 73 two-way movements during the rush hour period. Now, if I take the 33 affordable dwellings, I'm going to go for a school run either way within that period, which is 66 movements, and the other person going to work, which would be 33 movements. I would then assume that whichever parent had taken the child or children to school, they would probably then scoot out to work themselves. So even excluding that, we're at a minimum of 99 movements within that court period. We then heard from the applicant that there would be a doctor's surgery with 10 consulting rooms. A doctor's appointment on average is 10 minutes, which means that you have 12 movements per hour for each of the doctors that would be working. So we are looking at 120 movements for the doctor's surgery once it is built. So the Highways Agency raised no objections on the movements that were given of 73 per hour. Now, if I take the 73 per hour as those movements, I add in the 99 people doing a school run and 120 for the doctor's surgery, then I think the Highways Agency may well have come to a slightly different conclusion. In addition to that, we are placing quite a bit of weight on the provision of the doctor's surgery. Thank you, Mr. Chinier, for pointing out the documents which says what is needed in order to get a doctor's surgery. And you will, I'm sure, agree with me that the steps that anyone has to go through are quite huge. So the first one is NHS capital funding, and that's applications and approvals. I'm not sure if any of us are aware, but there's a huge target to reduce funding. As Councillor MacDonald said, we've got a main NHS hospital with Frimley, which is riddled with rack. And as we know from our own bitter experience with the theatre, we know how expensive this is to put right. They have been looking, they had secured funding. They were one of those that were definitely going to get the funding, and yet we don't seem to be there yet with a very major hospital. As a GP surgery is essentially a private business, I appreciate that the current doctor there, Dr. Davis, is very keen to do this. There is nothing whatsoever to stop Dr. Davis deciding to move to Cranley, where there is obviously already a resident population looking for services. And also, if he's that keen to expand his service, given that we had conversations earlier from two residents that have let us know that there is a community building available potentially in Windlesham, ready built, available to rock and roll, presumably at a very low rent, as it would be providing a community service. I just do not accept that we can take into consideration the provision of a doctor's surgery in according to the planning recommendations that we've got 7 years, but according to the letter from the NHS from the ICB, 8 to 10 years to progress. So we're already at a disagreement there. The other thing that worries me very much indeed is that according to the Surrey County Council, there should be no HGV movements between school start and finish times. Now, I don't know if that's a typo, but at the moment, what county is saying is that between 8:30 and 4:30, there can't be any HGV movements, which means presumably those HGV movements have got to be out of those hours. I'm assuming it's a typo from county. Perish the thought that they might not be 100% accurate on some of their highways recommendations. So in terms of whether or not we're in a safe position, and taking on board Councillor Garrett's comment about whether or not we have reasons for not agreeing with the councillor, with the officer's recommendation. Grey Belt land, I appreciate, and it was a very comprehensive report, but to compare this site with the site in between 3 main roads in Bagshot, I'm afraid I'm struggling with. It is by the officer's very own report. It will result in harm. It's out of scale with the existing character. It doesn't comply with the Windlesham neighbourhood plans policies of let me just get my notes, of 1.1 and 2.2. And it doesn't also meet the housing need, which is for 2 to 3 bedroom dwellings, in order to promote the sustainability of the village by encouraging families to come into the village. So on that basis, I'm hoping, am I over time? I'll stop. Lovely. Hopefully other members in the committee have made some notes. Thank you.
We'll ask Neville, would you be able to respond? Is there a specific question that you'd like answered? Councillor Wheeler.
No, not from the officers. There's no particular question.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any other questions? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few. I'm going to try and cut them as short as possible. On the GP length of time to build the GP, 8 to 10 years from was what I was reading in the paper, and I appreciate all the other points you've made about it. So does that mean once the care home is actually built, for that period of time, the members of the care home will have to find other GP surgeries that we're already saying we haven't got? That's question number one. So I take note of the GP. Oh, we won't go into GP surgery on that one. I've already mentioned the other one. So the buses. The buses that are running, that are highlighted bus 500, and I've done a bit of investigation on bus 500. To be fair, as Councillor MacDonald said, if you want to go to Frimley Park Hospital, you basically got to go in the morning or the afternoon, and after that you can't go. And actually you might get stranded there because you might never get back. So I think if we're going to upgrade the bus shelters, it might be a good idea to update the bus service, because if the bus service isn't there, then I don't see this working. And I appreciate that the speaker said they're going to have their own minibus. I'm not sure they're going to be wanting to go into things like Frimley Park on a regular basis. On a Saturday, there are only 3 buses. So if you're on a Saturday you want to go to Frimley Park, you can only go at 9:44. In fact, no, you can't. On a Saturday, you can't even go to Frimley Park. You can only go to the Meadows. So that's fine. You haven't got to go to hospital. You can go to the Meadows roundabout. I'm sorry, but there's no point in upgrading a bus stop if you haven't going to upgrade the bus service. Now, I know that's not a planning consideration, but it's something that's mentioned in the report, so I'm highlighting the fact that there is no point in doing it. That's that one. Okay, a general question. At what point do we see Surrey Heath not being a stage of critical need for older people's housing? We have got so many. I've sat in this chamber for, I don't know, about 6 years now. I think every other month we get a care home that comes up, and we've built a lot of them. But I'd like to understand, if we look at the Surrey Heath Local Housing Needs Assessment, where are we with that? When do we stop needing care homes? And I've cut all those questions short, and I've cut a few out about GP surgeries. So I'll leave it with that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallop. Gavel, Nevin?
Yeah, thank you. So just in terms of the, in the meantime, until that GP surgery comes forward, yes, residents of the site would be expected to use other facilities, and that's where that 92k contribution goes towards addressing all the short and medium term impact of the development itself. So the GP surgery itself is actually a bonus in the longer term provision. In terms of the bus stop, I appreciate that the bus stop service necessarily might not be great, but ultimately with the number of people coming here and the improvement to the bus stop itself, there would then be it would then be something for the bus service to look at, to say, okay, do we need to increase the frequency and service of the service? We also need to recognise that the carpool service that's provided on site serves the IRC development. So in reality, the bus stop is more so towards the remaining 33 dwellings, more so than anything else. The carpool service provides trips to supermarkets, local amenities, to the doctors, etc. And that would be available also on hire, and it's included within the service charge for the IRC development. I think that covers. Is that the thing?
Can I just ask a follow-up on that last point? Okay. So the carpool service. So this is a car that someone either taxis them around or they can drive themselves. But the inference is that, as Councillor White said earlier on, 65-year-olds are less likely to be driving. So if they're less likely to be driving, then they can't use the carpool service. So if there is a carpool service that's not being driven by them, does that mean they've got to employ someone to drive them? And what is the cost in comparison to a bus?
From what I understand, the person who would be driving the carpool service would operate as part of the staff of the IRC development. Yeah, included within the service charge, yeah, free.
Thank you, members. An attempt to draw this to a close. Last two, Councillor Wilson, Councillor White, Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. It's my first time talking. I've got about 10 different points. I don't really want to do them all at once, so if it's okay, I'll just do one at a time. The first point is on the green belt that Councillor Garrett raised, and maybe the officer can confirm this, that there's a crucial difference between this application and Grove End, because this application fails the golden rules for building on the grey belt. Grove End passed these golden rules, so the development was not inappropriate and very special circumstances were not required. But in this case, if the committee doesn't believe there are very special circumstances, it says that we should refuse the application. So if this committee finds there aren't very special circumstances, so effectively the fact that it's grey belt could be considered as grey belt doesn't make any difference because it fails the golden rules. And maybe the officer could confirm. So this is effectively the same criteria that's required for building previously, like a year ago, building a housing estate on the green belt. Can we start with that one?
I can come on in on this one. Firstly, in terms of the golden rules, you're correct. It doesn't meet the golden rules because of the 15% elements, whereas the Grove End development provided 50% affordable housing. It did meet the golden rules, and therefore, in effect, it wasn't inappropriate development because it ticked all the boxes under 155 of the NPPF. However, although the fact it doesn't tick that particular box as development. Paragraph 158, I believe, also says that golden rules have to be given substantial weight. Now, it ticks the other boxes of the golden rules, so you still have to have due regard to that. Additionally, irrespective of that, you've then got to consider the very special circumstances and the benefits. And in this particular case, we know that the benefits are quite substantial. The housing position, the housing supplies position is a substantial benefit. Neville said right at the beginning in his presentation about the fact that we know with other appeal decisions, the government gives substantial weight to that, where you don't have a 5-year housing land supply position. In this particular case, we're between 3 and 3.7 years. So we're not there at the moment. So whilst we're not there, these sites are going to continue to come forward. And if the applicant came in and provided the 15%, it wouldn't be inappropriate development. So you have to look at it on that element as well, in terms of weighing everything in terms of the planning balance.
Thank you. Yeah. So if they had met the golden rules, then it would be comparable to Grove End. But and interesting that you say that we need to take into account that they met the other two. But one of these golden rules is sufficient highway improvements. So I wonder, is it possible to bring back the slide about the proposed site plan? I think it was called, and because I don't know if anyone's realised just how minor these proposed highway improvements are. Could you point out where the additional footpaths will be on Snows Ride?
Alongside the site.
Yeah, so on the west side, it's just north of Snows Paddock up to the A30. And on the east side, it's from the A30 down to the first pedestrian entrance. Is that right?
Yeah, alongside on this western side, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I would say that it wouldn't come as far south as where your cursor is there. It would be much further north that it would come down to. So, I mean, I guess my point is that it's just a token improvement, and it doesn't really change the pedestrian safety or road safety at all. So there's an argument whether they actually meet the second golden rule.
The road safety improvements were, I mean, when the application came in, the transport statement and the road safety, the highway improvements were subject to a road safety audit, and that's what governed how they came forward with these highway improvements. We also need to set out that the golden rules only sets out the necessary improvements. We believe this covers that point.
And did the road safety audit cover the whole of Snows Ride or just outside the proposed development?
I believe it considered all of Snows Ride at that point, yeah, at the point of the development.
Because, as we mentioned earlier, there's the blind bend that is already hazardous.
Is that where?
That's further south on Snows Ride.
Sorry?
It's further south on Snows Ride before the junction with School Road.
I can't confirm that at this point.
Okay. If I could just cover another point. On the affordable homes, I think I concur with the report that the affordable homes, the C3 affordable homes, are the wrong tenure. They're 30% discount. And the thing is, there aren't really any comparable properties to this in Windlesham. We don't have blocks of flats in Windlesham, but if there was one and you had a 30% discount, the flats would still cost £200,000 or £300,000. So not affordable for people on the register because it's the wrong tenure. What we actually need is social rented homes in the borough. So I don't think any weight should be given to that because we do have an unmet need for affordable homes, which we all want to meet. But this application doesn't do that. The freed up homes, the 154 freed up homes, there's no guarantee any of them will be freed up in our borough or that they'll be the kind of homes that we need, and they wouldn't be affordable homes because the people who are going to be buying these unaffordable IRC homes are going to be wealthy people. They're going to be potentially 65, but spouses or partners could be younger. Everyone's going to have at least one car because you can't get anywhere on public transport or on foot from that site. So there could be potentially about 100 more cars than there are parking spaces. And yeah, we've already covered the poor bus service as well. A point on the Sang, It's a bespoke sign, not a council-run sign. We have a sign like that in Earlswood Park, and the developer, the landowner, is responsible for it, as it says would be here, and they basically don't do anything. They don't empty the dog poo bins, they don't maintain the paths, they don't have any benches or anything to make it attractive. So in future, this sign could suffer from the same problems, and there's another bespoke sign being built at the moment in Heath Park Woods, and the developers using contaminated rubble to build a whole road, and the contamination is going to be staying there. It's contaminated with residential waste, plastics and a sort of toothpaste tube and things like that. And that's the kind of contamination that's going to affect the land and the water table and so on, potentially, with this sign.
Councillor Dawson, how many more questions do you have? I'm just mindful of your time.
Can I stop and let somebody else speak? And if it's possible, I might like another turn later. Is that okay?
Just on the transport elements, I'm just wondering whether or not our colleagues from Surrey County Council could give any views on that at all, in terms of highway safety and the bend on the road and things like that, because obviously it was assessed as part of the application and you gave comments on that, so just wanted to get your sort of views on that from a Surrey County Council view, really, on that point.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, no problem at all giving a perspective on that. Well, where do I start, really, I suppose? First off, the bus service, I recognise that it's very limited at the moment. We do seek to secure improvements to bus infrastructure because we know that having a safe place to wait, a shelter, having that information provided through...
Sorry, would you be able to pull the microphone a little bit more to the front? It's difficult to hear you.
No problem.
You can pick it up and move it.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. Okay, so yes, with regard to the bus stop improvements, we do know that bus stop improvements do encourage people to use buses. The provision of shelter, provision of seating, provision of information, all of these have been flagged up when we've surveyed bus users. These are significant advantages that do encourage bus use. We would also be looking at a kind of longer term aspect of it. So introducing these kind of infrastructure improvements may not have an immediate benefit, but over the course of the next few years, when people start to change their choices in modes of transport, then we're likely to see buses become more and more popular, and hopefully these improvements will snowball in that respect. So it's just an element of that. In addition, I believe the applicant is providing, as you mentioned, the carpool service, which is very similar to the demand responsive transport system that Surrey County Council is currently promoting, which aims to supplement the kind of main public bus services with branches off where you won't have necessarily a sufficient pool of people to support a commercial bus service, but there is that market still there that needs to be supplied, and in this case the applicant is doing it through that particular method. In terms of the wider highway improvements, we can only really look at the impact of the site itself and almost the front door aspects of it. So hence the highway improvements that we've got within the application are mainly around the immediate vicinity of the site. Do recognise that there are an awful lot of roads within Windlesham, across the whole of Surrey actually for that matter, which wouldn't necessarily meet our ideal safety standards. But there's only so far we can push for improvements and demonstrate they are required and reasonable as per the planning system. Is that helpful?
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilson, you're satisfied?
Yes, thank you. Could I ask a question of the officers? It's if you've got our full agenda packet, it's on page 58. It's the I think it's your report. That's the final page of your report. The title of the section is Unregistered Land. And was that from you? And I'm interested in the final sentence of the second from the last paragraph, and it says this is a matter that any landowner must resolve prior to bringing forward a planning proposal. It said, are you aware of the issue of the unregistered land? And it hasn't been resolved, and we've got a planning proposal that's been brought forward.
Thank you. Yes, I'm aware of the unregistered land. Unfortunately, the planning proposal was brought forward without that being resolved, and I was in discussions with the applicant about, getting that sorted out. I spoke with our legal department, hence my conditions were made as pre-commencement conditions to ensure that the unregistered land was looked into prior to providing the accesses onto London Road and Snows Ride.
Yeah, so it's been brought forward, and it's not just been brought forward, it's come to the committee to make a decision before it's been resolved. Wouldn't it be better to defer until it's resolved before the committee makes a decision?
I think that would probably be something for the planning colleagues to answer.
Yeah, I mean, we're aware of the unregistered land situation. Ultimately, we can move forward with the planning permission with an amended red line boundary as part of the Section 106 agreement. Just to be clear, the unregistered land is literally a slight strip of land forward of the site and in between the highway. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, the developer would need to resolve that issue anyway prior to commencement. The conditions are worded that it needs to be resolved prior to commencement. So I don't see any issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about what the implications of not resolving it for years and years potentially could be, because we had this problem at Heath Park Woods where planning permission was granted 8 or 10 years ago, and construction's only just started because of constant legal agreements and difficulties and things. So perhaps it would be better that the committee didn't make a decision until, I mean, that is the advice here. We could defer and not make a decision until the unregistered land has been resolved, so that we're not creating, a planning blight for a decade like happened in Heath Park Woods.
I mean, the applicant has carried out its duty in terms of the consultation process, signing the correct certificates and whatnot, publicising the development, and no one has come forward as part of that in respect of the unregistered land at this point.
And I mean, just on that point, I mean, that would be covered off in Section 106, as the officer has already advised the members of. So that would cover that base as part of that process. I just wanted to come back on Councillor Wilson's couple of points, really, if I may, Chair. Yeah, please. Just on, I think you raised 2 points about the affordable housing and also about being discount market sale. Mr. Rahman has already presented to members that this meets the policies within the MPPF in terms of this is a form of affordable housing which is supported nationally. The applicant is proposing up to 30% discount market sale, whereas the MPPF is 20% market sale. So that's a benefit as part of the application, which has been presented from members tonight. Just on another point which you raised about the SANG issue, and I understand the issues which are ongoing at Earlswood SANG as well, but I think in terms of this particular SANG, we are obviously going to be in negotiations with National England. There'll be drafting of the 106 as well, and they'll be heavily involved in that process to make sure that, the right strategy is in place, the right management responsibilities are in place as well. So hopefully that gives you an element of safeguarding going forward, so that if there are any issues in terms of any sort of management responsibilities, there are safeguards already in place. So that's the process we're going through to make sure we secure the relevant obligations with National England, and we meet the habitats regs as well as part of that process.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, it seems like it'd be better if it was council owned sign capacity that would be used, because then there would be more control. But I definitely take the point. if I could have one more point, because I think it's a really important one, because we have to find very special circumstances or we have to refuse this application. And the 5-year housing land supply has been cited as a very special circumstances. But that would basically mean we would be approving housing estates in the Greenbelt without following the golden rules. But the reason we don't have a 5-year housing land supply is because the government just instantly doubled the target a few months ago, and there just simply hasn't been time. And that seems like a pretty good defence, because we did have 7.24 years of housing land supply. So it's not like the council is trying to avoid building houses. On the contrary, it's just the government's doubled the target. And so, you know, we did have an ample housing land supply for the previous target, and I'm sure we will again for this target once we've had time to revise the local plan. That's just a comment.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. I'd like to put this... Sorry, last question, Councillor White.
It may sound flippant now compared to what's just been asked, but the walking area, which Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Wilson have adhered to, and I have in the past walked that area, are the pavements going to be wide enough for mobility scooters? Because the area at the moment is a no-no for that sort of thing, and, you know, because it's going to be a retirement village, I'm sure there will be the use of mobility, and they will have to get to the villages somehow, but I wouldn't like to use one on those roads at the moment.
Is it possible for County Council just to come back on that point, please? Possible.
Yes, sorry, could I just clarify, which footpaths are we talking about here? The ones within the SANG, or?
Any footpaths anywhere around that development.
Any footpath anywhere, oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
We have certain guidelines that we need to adhere to as far as footpath widths, gradients, construction, all that kind of side of things is concerned. So that would all be covered under what we call Manual for Streets, which is a key document when it comes to constructing and building footways. Whether they would be specifically designed for mobility scooters or whether that's just the ordinary way of doing things anyway, it is another matter. But typically, we wouldn't be constructing new footways, full stop, without them being fully accessible. So mobility scooters, wheelchairs, pushchairs, everything.
But surely you've got to look at that sort of thing with, you know, with a view to what sort of development this is. It's supposed to be a retirement village, and
yes,
people are going to want to escape from the village, so they're going to use their mobility scooters. So the area around, not necessarily in the development, but the areas around have to be fit for purpose.
They do. No, you're quite right, and this is why we have those standards, and that's precisely what any new infrastructure on the highways will be built to.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. I wasn't sure earlier whether I should declare an interest, and I think I probably should now, having listened to the discussion, because amazingly, you will be surprised to learn I live in a retirement estate, but it's one that's totally different from the sort of thing we're talking about now. Am I okay to proceed, please?
It's not owned by the same developer, is it?
I don't see any reason why that's a significant enough interest.
Thank you. I'm trying to find reasons for refusal here that are going to stand up at appeal. We've heard about inappropriate development and the size of development. My personal view is that that's not going to stand up. We've heard about issues to do with traffic and road safety issues. The representative from the Highways Authority has steadfastly defended the County Council's position tonight, And from my own bitter experience, once the County Council Highways Authority makes a statement as the professional experts on the matter, it is very difficult to get a planning inspector to go against it. There's also been arguments about the surgery, but the sad fact is, I think, that if we accept those arguments about the time it takes to build an NHS facility, which it's worth noting is ludicrously long, clearly. I mean, the idea of building a building of this size that's going to take 8 to 10 years is frankly laughable if it wasn't so, I better not use that word. Anyway, so but I don't think that's going to stand up, because if we took that view, then we'd never accept any medical facility or community facility being provided by a developer. So that's difficult as well. And we've just heard that the affordable housing argument is vulnerable as well. That leaves, for me, the question of the green belt, and in particular the question of the special circumstances rules. I finally come to a question, thank you for your patience, and that is this. Have these rules changed since July last year? So if we were looking at this, or if officers even were looking at this application prior to July of last year, would they have looked at it differently from the way they've looked at it now? Thank you.
In short, yes, but given the latest policy changes which came into force in December 2024, we are mindful of those policy changes. So it has changed our perception in terms of what is acceptable and is not acceptable. But also, I think members need to be mindful about the added issues in terms of housing delivery. As Councillor Wilson has already said, our housing delivery doubled overnight, literally from December 24, and we're only at a 3-year to 3.7-year 5-year housing supply. That's a significant material consideration for this council to consider tonight. If you look to grant or refuse the application, and in the round you need to weigh up the pros and cons and the planning balance, and it's clearly set out in 9.1, 9.2, 9.3 of the report, where the planning balance sets out that as officers we feel that given the change in policies, the change in our housing delivery tests, the change in terms of our overall need, we should be supporting this application. And I think that basically weighs in favour of recommending approval for this application.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
One last councillor. One last question.
Can I just clarify something? Just earlier, it's been raised that regarding the model. I mean, ultimately, our housing needs assessment sets out our overall need for extra care development. We need to be clear that there's different forms of extra care development. There's sheltered care, there's extra care, and then there's your care home. So there's a different model here that's applied. Developments like these are able to provide efficiencies in scale that smaller operators are unable to do, whilst they also make more efficient use of land. RSC development as a whole is a relatively new concept in the UK, but globally in the West, it's a model which is growing in popularity, and clearly there is a demand for this type of development. There are extensive benefits to this model as well, in terms of the health and well-being benefits, the economic benefits, and the release of homes. The model also provides occupants with genuine choice. Care homes typically don't have the social benefit associated with these communities. We don't have any evidence-based data to suggest that this type of development would not contribute towards Surrey Heath's extra care need, whilst Surrey Heath as a whole is 309 out of 317 of the least deprived local authorities as per the index of multiple deprivation. I appreciate there's been comments about wider developments in the area. However, as I set out before, there are different types of retirement development. There is retirement housing, which doesn't provide any real care on site. There is IRC development like this, and then there are your care homes. These are all very different forms of housing, and these are set out in our housing needs assessment as to what is required for each type of housing. For example, your McCarthy and Stones are typically considered C3 development. This is a C2 development. So there's a difference there when we consider the unmet need. Given the nature of this type of development, there is an expected turnover of residents has been set out by the applicant, which in any case would provide a reason for why there are any vacancies on other sites. But ultimately, we have to be guided by our housing needs assessment, which provides an evidence-based position on our latest need. And then in terms of the DMS affordable units as well, we need to look at, as for the C3 development alone, this provides 70% affordable housing essentially, and the DMS definition, again, as Gavin pointed out, we're providing a 30% discount rather than a 20% discount, so that is an additional benefit that we need to look at. So not only there's an over-provision, but also an additional discount. It was also set out that this wouldn't necessarily meet local needs, but the DMS units would, by definition, be subject to a local eligibility criteria, so that would be targeted towards local residents in the first instance.
I'll do one last question with Sean MacDonald. Councillor? I've got them listed down.
I'll be very quick. I'm not entirely convinced Councillor White got an answer to her question around the mobility and the escape challenges from the compound. The description in the documents provided say that the enhancements, I'm sure will be to spec, are for between, I think, Snow's Paddock and I think just round the corner on the A30, which means the remainder of Snow's Ride and Hatton Hill, which is the access route to the village and all the facilities that it offers, has no pathway. Okay, so I think the turnover of residents was just referred to. I think we'll end up with enhanced turnover because we'll, on a grey winter's day, because we're going to have mobility scooters going down a road with people driving at 30 miles an hour. Or we'll also have people of reasonable physical health, but maybe not super alert physical health, wandering down the side of a road if they wish to access the facilities of the nearest village. So I'm just wondering if you could explain how that is compatible with sustainability, because you're pushing people onto the A30 for a bus service that doesn't exist, but also in terms of the principle of as low as reasonably practicable, which must be buried in your policy somewhere, and also encouraging people to be sustainable, as per the ELSA whip.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I agree with a lot of what you said there, Councillor, in terms of being able to provide developments with accessibility by foot, by cycling, the whole lot. But we also need to be reasonable in what we're requiring from new developments. So this isn't a particularly large site in the big scheme of things. If we start to ask for kilometres of improved footway, of improved cycleway, particularly at these kind of locations where we have very little land available as far as higher land is concerned, then it's going to be classed as unreasonable, because we're potentially going into routines where we're asking for a compulsory purchase of land to be able to install the infrastructure that you're talking about. Theoretically, I completely agree with you. But practically, it's just not possible for the majority of the sites in these kind of locations, I'm afraid.
Councillor Lisnable.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate... Oh, sorry. Let me go to that. Sorry. I appreciate you allowing me to ask my question. It was just mentioned that the policy changed in December 2024. I know in my day job, tax law is never retrospective, but this application, 240428 OU, is dated 31st of May 2024, which predates 31st of December. Should we be considering, when this application was presented, it would have been presented based on the interpretation at that time?
No, it has to be the date of determination. So if the policy changes during the course of the application, you have to have due regard to that. And unfortunately, government policy is fundamentally changed.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, members. Councillor Wilson, 10 questions.
Very quick. Are the following items valid planning reasons that count against the application in the tilted planning balance? So MPPF 143, purpose C and purpose E. Purpose C, it already says in the report that that is valid and it is breached. Harm to the character of the area, the semi-rural character will now become suburban or urban. Is that a valid planning reason against this? And if the committee decides that sustainability, as we've heard, isn't well adequate from this, then would that be a valid planning reason as well? Thank you.
Purpose E that you refer to is urban regeneration. And with this development, they haven't put forward alternatives. This is the site they've put forward, but it doesn't prejudice the urban regeneration still of Camberley and other sites for schemes that would come forward. So no, that principle or that purpose doesn't really apply in this particular instance.
It doesn't incentivise developers to come out to the greenbelt to build these things rather than use brownfield sites in the middle of Camberley. So wouldn't Camberley be harmed by this, the regeneration of Camberley?
No, because Camberley is still identified in emerging plan, etc., as to how that will be delivered. So it's not affected. Those sites will still come forward in Camberley in terms of actually looking at the delivery we need and the housing we need. Our emerging and existing local plan takes into account the urban locations as well.
And the local plan, obviously, would be departed from if this was approved to such an extent that we'd have to get approval from the Secretary of State.
Yes, the reason why we're going to the Secretary of State, because it's a departure, because it's a greenbelt site. That's the reason why we have to go to Secretary of State. If it was not an appropriate development, we wouldn't need to go to the Secretary of State.
Members, should we put this to the vote and see what happens? The officers have recommended, got a recommendation of grant, subject to conditions and referral to Secretary of State as a Section 106 legal agreement. Do I have a proposer? Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, Chair, who's the proposer?
Jonathan Quinn.
Jonathan Quinn, thanks. And who's the seconder? Can I get that confirmed? Councillor David Whitcroft, thank you.
Okay, can you... Sorry, those in favour?
So we've got Councillor Mary Glowett, Councillor Jonathan Quinn, Councillor David Whitcroft, Councillor David O'Mahony. All those against? Councillor Sean Garrett, Councillor Liz Noble, Councillor Ying Tong Perrott, Councillor Pat Tedder, Councillor Valerie White and Councillor Richard Wilson. Any abstentions? No abstentions.
Members, I'm going to take a short 10-minute break at this section. It's obviously been refused. We need to have a valid reason now to put that refusal forward. Enjoy your 10-minute break.
I'm not sure if you've restarted, but there's no sound.
We were just being quiet, Victoria. Members, as we decided not to go with the officer's recommendation, we now need to find valid planning reasons for refusing the application that are defendable at an appeal. So if we start putting hands up, we'll start asking questions and we'll put those to the officers, see how that stands up. Oh.
I was just wondering, just for the audience, everyone watching, whether we can confirm the votes on it as well, because it's a bit clear to refuse, but can we just have the official result on the record as well? Because I think that's normally the practice, isn't it?
I can get those results out.
There were 4 votes for, and there were 6 votes against. No abstentions.
Okay, members, does anybody want to go first? Councillor White.
Okay. First of all, the application is not in a sustainable location, does not comply with the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan, 1.2 sustainable development, 2.2 should maintain established density, inaccurate consultation with other lead authorities, i.e. movement of vehicles, does not meet the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan policy car parking, does not meet Surrey Heath Borough Council approach of affordable housing, no very special circumstances to justify the establishment of harm, and the fact that it is out of scale with the existing character of the area.
Councillor White, could you slow down?
No.
We're all trying to write it down and you're way ahead of us.
I thought this was recorded.
It is, but they're trying to write this out and check this while we're doing it. Would you just be able to repeat your list? Just a little bit slower.
Do you want me to start again?
Please.
This development is not in a sustainable location. Does not comply with the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan.
Councillor White, can you just explain what exactly, in terms of the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan, it doesn't comply with? Because I know you've mentioned about parking. Members have to be very mindful that we refused an application not long ago in this chamber where we refused it against the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan on parking, and the inspector came back and it was clear that we should be using the current parking standards set by Surrey County Council. So please be mindful of that decision.
What is the point of the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan then, if you can't refer to it and put that forward as a reason?
I'm just advising members that this was a material factor when it went to appeal, and I'm advising members you need to be mindful of that, because obviously policies get outdated, policies get updated, and we have to use the current policies set by Surrey County Council, and this was made clear in a latest appeal decision where members refused an application in this chamber, and that appeal was overturned and allowed.
Okay. Flummoxed me there now. The Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan 1.2 is not a sustainable development. 2.2 should maintain established density.
So, do you mind me just interrupt? I sort of ask the officers a question. Windlesham Plan, should we take that on board as a weighted argument for this application in relation to all the changes that have happened recently and the emerging local plan that we have?
It has to be taken into consideration. It's registered with the council as a valid neighbourhood plan.
I've just asked the question.
Therefore, it has to be referred to.
I think, as I said, I mean, obviously, we have an emerging local plan as well, which will be taken into consideration as part of this process. But also, you know, the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan is is a dated document which has been updated with the current changes to the MPPF and also the changes to the local plan. So that's a material factor. So anything which we're looking to refuse needs to be against current policies as well going forward. Because given some of the decisions made by the planning inspectorate, we need to be mindful of that. So I'm just giving some guidance to the members. So when we go to appeal, we have a robust set of reasons that officers can defend against current policies.
Sorry, Chair, if I could possibly come in. The Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan is a supplementary document to the Surrey Heath Local Plan. None of the policies within the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan contradict anything which has actually been adopted. Our local plan has not yet gone through full consultation. So therefore it is judged against the existing local plan and the emerging local plan. In terms of the policies that Councillor White has mentioned, the sustainable development, it says very clearly there that it should be in a sustainable location, which this one isn't. I think we've had a lot of debate about that. And it also says in 2.2 that it should maintain established density.
So we need to. Yeah,
Okay, all right. I have put comments in the Teams chat, which the officers could view.
Thank you, Victoria. I am getting advised by Democratic Services that it's...
I think we need to keep reasons to the committee to discuss at this stage.
So not online?
Only members of the committee.
Only members of the committee, thank you. Valerie, would you like to complete?
Right. Inaccurate consultation with other lead authorities, i.e. the movements of vehicles. Excuse me. I've already been corrected on the next one. Does not meet the Windlesham Neighbourhood Policy re-car parking, but I think Victoria's just adhered to that, saying that the plan is current, the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan.
Can I just get some clarification on the point about inaccurate consultation? Because
that
obviously
was with highways regarding the movements, the 72 movements, and it was worked out again by Councillor Wheeler that it would be substantially more than that, and it needed to be looked at again.
So I must remind members that as part of this application, the applicant submitted robust technical supporting information for their transport assessment, which obviously went through to our colleagues at Surrey County Council for their comments, and they came back and they were happy with that. So I think we need to be mindful of that.
We're not happy with that. We find that it's inaccurate. So are we not here to do that?
So if you are looking to go down that route, you need to provide technical information, which is to the contrary of this, and this was given via training to members on this point. So we need to be very mindful of that, because obviously anything which goes to appeal is covered by technical information, which is assessed by technical highways colleagues as well. So that needs to be factored in the round. So I need to know, for my benefit, what exactly you are saying causes an impact to the highway network.
The fact that an inaccurate amount of movements was put forward, and when we look at it closer, which the councillors do, we found that didn't, I can't think of the right words, just didn't come true. Stack up, yeah, if I want a better word. Sorry, I can't get technical. I don't do technical, so...
I think what I said earlier, there needs to be an accuracy in terms of that. We can't just think there's not going to be an impact or there is going to be an impact when We've had technical information submitted, it's been assessed by our highways colleagues at Surrey County Council, and they're satisfied with that. If you're wanting to do that and you're saying, you know, the development is unacceptable in terms of the technical information, we will need to provide evidence of that to justify that.
Councillor White, do you want to proceed with your list?
It seemed worth it. It seemed to be blocked at every corner. Does not meet the Windlesham neighbourhood policy re-car parking, which I said. Does not meet Surrey Heath Borough Council approach of affordable housing. No very special circumstances to justify a... Sorry, I didn't. There's no very special circumstances to justify established harm and the fact that it's out of scale with existing character of the area.
Thank you. Members, is there anyone else? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's NPPF 143, purpose C, so encroachment into the green belt, and that was established in the report that that was inappropriate and caused harm, and harm to the character of the area as well, so change from being semi-rural to being urban or suburban. And then I think, not wanting to repeat what Councillor White's already said, but under the overall kind of subject of sustainability, I think the committee doesn't believe that it would be sustainable. So we've got problems with road safety, the problem we just mentioned about increase in traffic, public transport connections, and inability basically of people of that likely residents' inability to be able to reach the centre of Windlesham without everybody having a car.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor White again.
Right, regarding the movements, I don't think that the doctor's surgery movements were included in the Surrey County Council figures, so that's what upped the numbers.
Surrey County, are you able to answer that?
I can just double check that, but I'm reasonably sure that the GP surgery was included as part of the transport assessment in terms of the trip rates.
You stick to 72 movements when it was explained that with 10 doctors' surgery rooms, with 12 people each time, and the number of movements. Because it won't be just the people in the retirement village that use this doctor's surgery. They will come from everywhere. They build it and they will come.
Indeed.
Page 36 of the committee report includes the trip generation figures, which sets out the extra care, affordable, self-build and GP movements.
Can I just ask for clarification from Councillor Wilson, please, on your reference to 143? Were you referring to the purposes of the green belt, which are on the screen at the moment? Can you explain what purposes of the green belt you're saying it actually conflicts with?
Yeah, so purpose C, and it's mentioned in the report as well that it breaches purpose C of the green belt. I can try and find it, but that I think it's early on in the report. It mentions that it's inappropriate.
Thank you for clarifying.
Because it's encroachment.
Can I add one into the list as well? It's failure to secure service self-build plots. So that's in conflict with the Self-Build and Customs House Building Act 2015 and the accompanying PPG. The 10 self-build plots are not subject, don't appear to be subject to any binding conditions requiring plot servicing, design parameters or occupancy criteria. As such, there is no guarantee they will ever be delivered as genuine self-build customs homes. Councillor Garrett.
Can I consider that healthcare and education facilities are an infrastructure which is permissible as a reason for not accept. So basically, there is no GP surgery. We're going to have 154 flat accommodation people, and there won't be any GP surgery for them, potentially for 8 to 10 years if it actually gets built. So there actually is going to be a shortage of GP surgery places if this place gets built. Does the fact they're meant to be building one mitigate that? Because if it does, then okay, I can't use it. But there is, we've already said there's a shortage of GP surgeries, which is why they want one, but it's not going to be there for 8 to 10 years. So surely that is a reason, and a reason for not building it, because it isn't going to have the infrastructure in place.
The financial contribution that's given towards aims to address that issue.
Well, how,
and is
okay,
supported by
greatest
the
respect,
ICB.
how is £92,000, £400 going to fix the fact there is no GP surgeries and places?
There's no requirement for the development to provide that contribution in any case.
Okay, so they're giving it, but it doesn't actually help with the GP spaces. So the infrastructure is not in place unless the GP surgery is built.
Oh, I agree with you, Councillor Garrett, but we still need to find planning reasons.
Well, is that not a planning? Is that not a consideration? The fact that the infrastructure will be affected by the fact that there is going to be places, there isn't going to be GP spaces for unless they build it.
Neville?
I understand your comments on that, but as the report has been presented to members, and I understand the issue about, you know, it is 8 years in terms of the actual build out of this, but they have given that assurance to us, and they're going to provide that level of assurance, and they're providing that contribution as well. That needs to be weighed up in the actual planning balance of the application. So if members want to go down that route, we can put that as a reason for refusal, but it's a weak reason to go down, because given the community benefits of the application itself.
Just to add to that as well, it's also about the evidence. We've gone to the ICB. This is what they've said. They're supportive of it. We can't do any more than that in terms of a local planning authority. And again, we don't have any evidence to the contrary. So we have to bear that in mind.
Councillor Liz Noble, Councillor Wilson after.
Surely we've got precedent on that in the fact that other doctor surgeries that have been promised on planning applications in the borough haven't materialised.
I mean, that would have been on different circumstances at the time, with different issues. We have to look at the current situation now, where the ICB are given their guidance to us and take into account what they're advising us at this current point in time with this application.
I understand that, but if we're talking, on the one hand you're telling us that the planning inspectorate are looking at certain things in the past and we have to be mindful of those, surely the same applies to looking at things like doctor's surgeries that haven't been delivered in the past. It doesn't seem equitable or appropriate that one government body can say you've got to abide by previous decisions, and yet we're being told that on the other hand, the planning inspectorate can do what they like.
I think, as Mr. Parsonson has already said, I think, you know, we took the decision at the time, you know, at a point in time, we granted an application with a doctor's surgery. The application came back to committee, and members took that decision to not have a doctor's surgery. And that is a factor and decision that council made. Now we've got a new application in front of us, and this whole matter's come about again. It's been proposed by the applicant. That is a material factor. We need to consider that in the round. And until that, if it changes in the future, then we consider that in the actual future going forwards. But we can't look at our previous decisions as a material factor going forwards, because at the moment we're using this as a very, very special circumstance to actually allow this application to go through. I know it's been refused tonight, but we need to weigh all the VSC points in the round to actually make it acceptable. So it's a difficult one, but I think the arguments to put forward in saying that the doctor's surgery is not going to come forwards is, I don't think that would be a right decision to go forward, because that is still on the table by the applicant.
But there's no guarantee that it will go forward.
Councillor Wheeler, I think as I've disclosed at the beginning of the presentation after Mr. Rahman, there is a email from the ICB which says they are willing to negotiate and willing to bring forward a doctor's surgery. That's what they are proposing at this moment in time. And
to your point, Mr. Chinier, the letter that accompanies that outlines the steps that they need to go through, and there is absolutely no guarantee whatsoever at this point that there would be funding that is forthcoming. And we've already established that there are extensive constraints on government funding for any kind of new building approach. And in their letter, they're saying it's going to take up to 10 years. And in our documents, we're giving them 7 years. So there is already an imbalance.
Can we do a reasons and then... What am I self-building?
Yeah. We've said.
So just coming back to Councillor Wheeler's point, I mean, at the moment, it's on the table being proposed by the applicant, and until such time they are saying it's not on the table, then we will come to a different consideration. At the moment, they are engaged in the process, they're working with the applicant, and they're proposing a doctor's surgery. I think just coming back onto some other points which have been raised by members in this chamber, I think we need to look at, you know, the very special circumstances. If members feel that the VSC points do not outweigh the harm, they need to give clear reasons why they think it doesn't outweigh the harm in this regard. So I don't know if members want to basically give any reasons on that.
Councillor Wilson.
Just to go back to the previous question about the purpose C, it's paragraph 7.6.23 of the report. By virtue of development in this large undeveloped plot of land, the proposal would also fail against purpose C of paragraph 143 of the NPPF, failing to safeguard the countryside from encroachment. So I think that's something that everyone would agree on.
In terms of the very special circumstances, or the benefits, let's put it that way, that the applicant has put forward with the scheme, I think from the members, from our perspective, and for yourselves as the members putting this forward for refusal, you need to explain to us why these benefits don't amount up. So they're usefully on the screen, and it would be useful to understand from this why you think that the harm is greater than the benefits that are being put forward.
So we could go through them and say why we don't give it as much weight as the officer did in the report.
That's up to you as the member to explain to us what you think.
Yep.
Councillor Quinn.
So as you know, I voted in favour, but to help obviously with the committee. Yeah, I agree with the officer's analysis. Surely we should be saying that we disagree with the very special circumstances. That would be the approach. And surely one argument could be that Surrey Heath already has several under-occupied C2 schemes with capacity, and the applicant makes no case that these cannot absorb the future demand, or makes a limited case for that. So that would be something that would undermine the very special circumstances if that's what the rest of the committee thought.
I think we need to be very careful here because obviously I understand there is an abundance of different C2 uses in terms of care homes, but this is extra care we are proposing here where there's a significant shortfall. And this is demonstrated within a current evidence-based document which has been commissioned by ICENI on behalf of the council in 2024, where it says there is basically significant shortfall in this kind of care. So in terms of making that sort of match between existing C2 use and extra care and absorption, it wouldn't work because obviously you can't absorb those extra care units into a C2 use when they don't provide those sort of extra benefits as part of that facility going forwards.
I have a question about provision of service land for a GP surgery and the financial contributions towards the ICB. There's a lack of enforceable delivery mechanism for that GP surgery, and it's not a GP surgery. It's a provision of a service land for the ICB. The ICB don't actually have to, although they've said they will. There's nothing's enforceable. It's too open-ended. It's too loose. So I don't see how that can be a substantially weighted argument if there's nothing behind it other than one letter from the ICB. They have no cash, they have no funding, they have no strategy, no plan. So how can it be substantial weight?
I think if members are minded to go down that route, then they can go down that route. All I can give is my professional opinion to members in terms of my guidance on this and what's happened to date. But if members are wanting to go down this route, it will be a difficult argument to make at any future appeal because obviously they are still negotiating. They're still wanting to bring forward that surgery. I get the point. It's not within probably a time frame you think is quick enough to actually bring forward a surgery, but they are still engaged in the process. So we need to weigh that up in the round. But if members want to go down that route, my professional opinion is not to do that. But if you want us to go down that route, that is a reason that we'll put forward to the Planning Inspectorate.
Councillor Tedder.
Following Mr Chenaya, surely then this application has come too soon. Because if we take this further on, any householder can come along and say, well, yeah, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do it for 10 years, but I still want my plan. And we'd have said no. And this is what they are saying. They are saying, we want our village. We have no guarantee. We have a possible chance. We've got two other developments that didn't get the doctor's surgery. We're told there's no money. There's a possibility in 10 years' time. I don't think it's fair on anybody else that comes to this chamber with a planning application.
Councillor Tedder, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but do you actually have something?
Yes, I think that as just said, there shouldn't be substantial weight on the contribution of land. It's easy. And if they're in consultation with the NHS, okay, bring the plan back when you've got a guarantee.
Thank you, Councillor Tedder. Councillor Quinn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of procedural points. I think the first thing is there are several members of the public and councillors here who want to discuss applications later on the agenda. I'm just wondering at what point we decide to let them go and continue these discussions if we think they're going on late, because obviously they're spending their evenings here on an application that they've not come for. Yeah, so just a couple of other points. I understand that officers clearly don't yet think we've got strong enough grounds for the planning inspector. What alternative options are there now? Now we've voted against the application. I mean, can we vote again on the officer's recommendation, or is the other option, I guess, to defer to another meeting and discuss it then? And then just a final point, a potential small ground for very special circumstances is clearly the Sang doesn't have formal car parking, and that means actual take-up would be pretty low, and that's the only other point I can come up with. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll check with Democratic Services.
Sorry, can I raise a point of order here? The meeting hasn't been officially adjourned or anything. We've got about 4 meetings going on in the chamber. So I have to ask, what is going on? And it is now 10 o'clock.
That's exactly what we were just sorting out.
Okay, good, because I, for one,
Going on.
are going to leave soon because this, it's very late and we've got the first item to complete yet with another 3 to come. So
this is one of the
I
options.
don't propose personally to stay until 10:30 if I can avoid it.
This is the option. We don't need a vote to continue past 10 p.m. Just so you know, I know there's some confusion on that one. The option is to adjourn the 3 other applications. There's space to have a meeting in the next 10 days or so and get that resolved then. And then we go through the reasons for refusing the Swan application. I just need to know whether...
I'm happy to propose adjourning the other 3.
I know.
I just wanted to speak on behalf of the residents here. They would prefer a deferral at this point, but I do have a point of clarification that I would like to ask. Thank you. I was going to ask for a potential deferral this evening in order to get some further information and a proper independent assessment of the drop-off and pick-up arrangements and the car parking arrangements on the Gordon Road application. I don't feel that that's adequately covered in the paperwork that we have been presented with, and I think it needs to be further examined. I see a nod from my left here, so that is encouraging. So I wonder if we do defer Gordon Road this evening, if that will allow for enough time for that information to be brought back to this meeting.
That's going down to the diaries and whether we can actually fit it in the time available over the next 10 days or so. We can come back to you on that.
Can we just make it clear which application that Councillor Cook is trying to defer? Because I think there's a few confused
Yes, I
places.
appreciate, and I apologise for the intervention at this time. It's just due to the late hour. It's with regard to Gordon Avenue.
Chair, can I just say, adjournment and deferring stuff is different, right? We're proposing adjourning, not deferring those other applications, if that makes sense.
We are looking to adjourn.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. So just come back to Councillor Cook's comment. Yes, we'll explore that recommendation with officers and we'll try to come back with some further information.
Councillor White?
Can I make a suggestion that has been done in the past, and I don't know why it hasn't been suggested now, that with all the reasons have been given from us as councillors, can it be fine-tuned by the Chair and the Vice-Chair and the officers? Or is that not in keeping anymore?
So can we do one thing at a time here?
Can we just put the vote through for the adjournments? I just need to know if everyone's in agreement. Correct. Unanimous.
Yeah.
Do you want to go?
So we need to clarify, we're still discussing the final.
Sorry.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, members of the public, the meeting's not finished yet. If you're in one of the adjourned applications, can you leave quietly? If you're still for the snow, please stay.
So members, can I have your attention please? So in terms of a reason for refusal on Snow's Ride. I've been discussing this with my colleagues here to my left. So the reason for refusal that we feel is appropriate given the feedback and the comments given by officers tonight are along the following grounds. Inappropriate development in the green belt by virtue of countryside encroachment and harm to the openness whilst not fulfilling the golden rules, harmful to the character and appearance of the area, and the very special circumstances do not outweigh the harm. That's the reason for refusal that we're willing to put forward to members to vote. If you've got any comments, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, totally agree with that. But can we also add another reason for refusal on sustainability and grounds as well? Because we didn't do that with Grove End, and so the appellant at the appeal said there was no difference of opinion with the council, when clearly there was. So I think we should make sure that's noted as well. Would that be possible?
So just on that point, what part of the golden rules are you not actually saying it doesn't comply with, given that it's on the edge of a settlement? We've got obviously highway improvements and there's contributions which have been proposed as part of the application.
I'm thinking of something completely separate. So the reason...
Can I just finish? But also we've got Surrey County Council on board who are supportive of the application. So I just wanted to be very, very clear on that point.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of something completely separate from the Greenbelt issue, something on transport and connectivity and sustainability, because I appreciate that we've got the report already, but the officer did say that there are areas nearby in Windlesham that are already not safe for pedestrians, for example, or people on scooters. So adding more people in is going to make things even less safe. So I think we need to make sure that we are registering that we're not happy with the sustainability, the highways issues.
Just one final point, if I may, just on that. I think members have to be mindful. I get the issue about mobility scooters and going back and forth on the site, but also you've got to be mindful that the application proposes an element of transportation, which residents are going to be using as part of that. So that's going to reduce the impacts in local areas as well. So I think you need to weigh that up in the rounds going forwards.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's some attempts at mitigation, but I think the view of the committee is that these don't go far enough, and they wouldn't be sustainable, even with the mitigation.
So could you just, sorry to push you here, can you just give us a reason for refusal then, the exact wording?
Okay, so this is a second reason, completely separate.
Yes, correct. Second reason, yeah.
So it would be the committee's not content with the highway situation to do with road safety and additional congestion and the safety of pedestrians.
You can complete that with the officers and the vice chair and the chair. You can say highways. Exact wording.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Can I just come in?
Yeah. Just on the congestion and road safety, I think we need to be mindful that I understand that you're not happy with it, but we have technical evidence which has been proposed by the applicant in consultation with Surrey County Council. Colleagues from Surrey County Council are happy with that. So I'm just trying to be helpful to the committee here that we have the technical advice and the technical information. It's what exactly are you worried about in terms of highway safety and also congestion, because we've got positive advice.
Yeah, so what I'm worried about is if it goes to appeal and we, the council, or other members, interested members of the public or whatever, want to make representations about the effect it's going to have on highways, road safety, congestion, and the lack of connectivity, that if we don't mention it as one of the reasons for rejection, then it's very difficult to bring that up at the appeal.
So paragraph 155, which is on the screen now, C references sustainable location, and it says particular reference to paragraphs 110 to 115 of the framework. And that specifically talks about the highway elements of things. And the question is whether or not you feel under the greenbelt side of things and under that clause, whether or not it doesn't meet the sustainable credentials adequately. But the danger with that is we've had all these measures put forward already in terms of the legal agreement, in terms of improvements, and county have verified that, said it's acceptable. So again, it's very hard to go against that. And to go against that, it's got to be a severe impact. And at the moment, that's not demonstrated. The point was made earlier by county that it's not a large scheme in that respect either. So we have to be proportionate to what we're asking for in the 106. Similarly, if you're going to refuse it, you have to be proportionate and recognise whether or not that harm is there. And actually, you've got to have that strong evidence. And as we've said countless times already, there is not that evidence at the moment.
But can we say that we're at least giving some weight to that as part of the overall decision? I mean, we heard evidence about how you can't get to the middle of Windlesham on foot without either going through potential floodwater on Hatton Hill or down round a blind bend with traffic coming straight at you. So we're putting the new residents in that position where the road safety is going to be a problem for them.
You have to be careful with not crossing the line where you're going against evidence which has already been tested, and not having just a broad brush approach where we don't think it's sustainable. Well, how are you backing that up? If it goes into a reason for refusal, it needs to be backed up. And at the moment, I don't have that from the committee that it's backed up. There's no evidence.
Would it be backed up if it was that sort of local knowledge from people who know the area really well, better than the officers? Because
can I just interject there and just remind members, we had training on this point from a barrister who advised members, you know, we cannot just base our reasons for refusal on hearsay, and also it needs to be backed up by evidence, and you need to be very, very clear on that. So I'm just trying to defend the council in the best light here as an appeal, and I think, you know, officers have been very clear about the evidence, the technical information, Surrey County Council's input on this, the mitigation which is being proposed by the applicant as well. We need to consider that all in the round before we come to that conclusion. And at the moment, I'm not hearing anything contrary to that.
Well, we did hear evidence from the highways officer earlier that there are areas in Windlesham that are currently not up to standard for safety, and adding volume would logically make it worse. So we have had that evidence.
We have also been told in training.
Sorry, can I raise a point of order? Yes. Because it's now 10:15, and we've already agreed to adjourn the last three items. My understanding was that we'd also adjourned to the next meeting in 10 days, whenever, the members' reasons for refusing this.
No, we need to have the reasons.
Why
Tonight.
can't that wait?
At least the reasons, so the officer and myself can then work that out afterwards. But Councillor Wilson wants an additional notes added to the refusal.
Well, all I can say about that is that the officer has made the position pretty clear to me.
Councillor Wilson?
Well, if it is a reason that turns out not to be valid, then we've got our other reason on greenbelt issues anyway. So I don't see that that's a hazard to the council, is it?
I think I cannot express enough in terms of this point because if we've already got technical evidence and we've got Surrey County Council who are supportive of the application, I would find it very hard to actually put a cogent argument forward. If it went to, I don't know, if it went to appeal for an inquiry, for example, we need to put evidence forward. And if we did put it for a reason for refusal, it could be striked out by our barrister, who may think we may not have cogent reasons to actually put forward and defend that part of that reason. I'm just giving you that advice to you.
The Surrey County Council made aware of the fact that there would be a 10 consultation room doctor's surgery with 120 potential movements per hour, because on the original documentation that's not clear. So that's new evidence that's come to light this evening when they talked about the size of the doctor's surgery that they were intending to put in. So surely that is something, to Councillor Wilson's point, that we can reasonably consider.
Officers? Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. So it's clear that officers are still not satisfied with our reasons for refusal. I think that's quite obvious. I didn't really get an answer to my question earlier about what are the other options for the committee at this point. So are there any other options? So we have to vote on reasons for refusal. Obviously, what happens if the committee doesn't support those? And is there anything else we can vote on now, either leaving this to another meeting or re-voting on the officer's recommendation or anything? Just interested in the options. Thank you.
I can discuss it during Democratic Services. I'm not sure if stopping midway is a good idea.
If you adjourn this item, you will have to bring it back to another meeting and start all the public speaking again, the presentation, everything again. I'll just...
So just to clarify, the only options for us now are to vote on the reasons for refusal and accept them, or adjourn. Is that right? What happens if we vote on the reasons for refusal and vote against those? That would be my question.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sorry, so the only two options we've got at this point as a committee are to adjourn this item, which we're not going to do because that would start the whole process again, or vote on the reasons for refusal. If we didn't accept the reasons for refusal, what happens then? Where's the application left then? That's a good question. Do we vote? We vote on the reasons for refusal, right, to accept?
No, we don't normally vote on those. We agree them, we don't vote on them.
Right, so if we don't agree them because they're not yet good enough, where would we be then?
So this is sort of my summary of the proceedings this evening. So the officer recommendation fell. At that point, the committee is asked for an alternative proposal. What that alternative proposal is, it's up to the committee. So, for example, it could be, the typical one would obviously be to defer the application for various reasons. You may not agree on those reasons, so that vote may fail, and another proposal may come forward to refuse the application for different reasons, or another one could be that you defer the application. but as Jenny alluded to just then, that in practice would mean the reconsideration of the whole application.
So the only realistic option is to accept the reasons that we've currently got for refusal, right? If no one else has got anything else to add. Well,
I think it's whether or not the committee has a alternative proposal which can be put to the vote. What that alternative proposal is, it'll be one for the committee.
I think Councillor White started and Councillor Wilson finished. The alternative proposal, which is to refuse the application on the grounds that it's not a sustainable location, does not comply with the Windlesham Neighbourhood Plan 1.2 of Sustainable Development or 2.2.
Sorry, Councillor
Wheeler,
would you hold back until as we're deliberating? Just give us a few minutes. Thank you.
Well, let's see what he's going to say.
So, members, we have the one reason. Do you want to carry on debating to find additional reasons, or would you like to agree on the one reason? I'll get Gavin to read out what we have, because we do need to vote on it. We don't agree on it, we actually vote on it.
Sorry, Chair. Another potential reason might be that the document talked all the way through about a doctor's surgery, where actually what was being offered was a piece of land on which a doctor's surgery could be built, not a doctor's surgery itself. So is that not misleading?
Well, I think if we get through tonight's proceeding with the one reason we've got, if anything could be added to it, it can be reviewed after, maybe. Councillor Quinn?
just absolutely want to clarify that, because obviously people have said the terms adjourn and defer. If there was an alternative proposal to defer rather than refuse, would that mean the whole application would have to be considered again from scratch at a new meeting? It would. Okay, so adjournment and defer are the same thing in this context. Okay, great.
So, Councillor Noble?
Yeah, so just on Councillor Noble's point, so in my reason that I read out, I did say that the very special circumstances which doctor's surgery forms part of would not outweigh the harm to the greenbelt. So that's captured in that reason for refusal.
It's not quite the same thing. Doctor's surgery, the whole document talked about a doctor's surgery being built, but that's not what's actually on offer by the developer. What's on offer is a piece of land. The whole document reads that a doctor's surgery is going to be provided, not a piece of land on which a doctor's surgery can sit. And I think in terms of our interpretation of the proposal coming forward, the fact that that piece of land is not a doctor's surgery is quite significant and puts a completely different slant on the application.
But it does come into the very special circumstances argument. If you therefore feel, well, they're just providing a piece of land, they're not actually providing the surgery that we thought they were providing, then actually you're giving less weight to that benefit. And therefore, that means in terms of the VSC, as Mr. Chinney has already read out, it's covered within that reason for refusal because you're not saying that the benefits put forward represent very special circumstances. So that's one of the arguments. So it is covered.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. I want to give notice of the fact that it is now 10:25, and at 28 minutes past 10, I'm going to move that the question now be put.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have some wording from the officers, which is quite a big catch-all, or will cover many areas. Would you like it read out, and would you like to vote on it? Agreed?
Chair, I'd like to make the alternative proposal that we reject the application on the grounds of the reasons that were read out earlier. Thank you. And if someone else would like to second it.
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
I'd like to make the alternative proposal that we reject the application on the grounds that were recently read out.
So was that the one which I read out?
Yes, the ones that you read out, yes.
Shall I read out again? Okay, so just to recap, this is the reason for refusal for the application. Inappropriate development in the Greenbelt by virtue of countryside encroachment and harm to the openness whilst not fulfilling the golden rules, harmful to the character and appearance of the area, and the very special circumstances do not outweigh this harm.
You got that?
Who was the proposer? Sorry.
Who's the proposer? Councillor Wilson.
Okay.
Seconded by Councillor Garrett.
Okay.
All those for, raise your hand. All those against, raise your hand.
Right, so keep your hands up.
No. Are we going back to 4 first? Can you read out?
All those for, raise your hands.
All those for. Right, I'll read your names out. So Councillor Sean Garrett, Councillor Liz Noble, Councillor Ying Tong Perrott, Councillor Pat Tedder, Councillor Valerie White, Councillor Richard Wilson. All those against the alternative proposal to refuse. Councillor Mary Glowett, Councillor Jonathan Quinn, Councillor David Whitcroft, and David O'Mahony. What's the school? What was his hand up for?
And any abstentions?
Oh, hang on. Right.
Can I confirm that's a vote in abstention?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Chair, that my vote against be recorded formally, please?
Thanks, Councillor Whitcroft. So, as per Part 4, Section D of the Constitution, as you know, a Planning Applications Committee, all of the votes are recorded in the minutes saying how.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say that the amendment has been accepted. The officers and myself will get back to you with the exact wording shortly. Thank you very much. Have a great night. Thank you to our friends in Surrey. Sorry you didn't get to do
Members,
what you
can
wanted
I
to
get
do.
you to hang on, please?
Thank you, members of the public.